حديث، وشاركناك معانا عشان نحافظ على مية بلدنا، ما هي مسؤولية مشتركة. محافظة القليوبية كانت من أولى المحافظات اللي استجابت للمبادرة، ودي كانت النتيجة.
احنا ابتدينا ري بالتنقيط في 2004. دي كانت بداية التجربة، فلقيناها أحسن من الري بالغمر، فوصلنا لحد دلوقتي بالنسبة للعنب ل50 فدان ري بالتنقيط. طبعا الجودة بقت أحسن، بنطلع منتج أحسن، مواصفات عالية، نسبة تصدير برضو يعني تعادل 95% من تصدير دول أوروبا.
في الحقيقة إن من أهم فوائد الري الحديث إن هو حافظ على البيئة في موضوع إضافة الأسمدة. طبعا زي ما حضراتكم عارفين إن كانت الأول إضافة الأسمدة بتتم عن طريق النسر في الري بالغمر وطرق الري التقليدية، دلوقتي بتتم من خلال أنظمة الري الحديثة، من خلال خراطيم التنقيط وأنظمة الري الحديثة. ده قلل كمية
secure water world is emerging as a top human development priority on the Sustainable Development Agenda. To this end, Cairo Water Week 2021, the fourth in a series of annual water conferences, is marking this year's edition with the theme Water, Population and Global Change, Challenges and Opportunities.
Cairo Water Week is becoming the biggest water-related event in the region. The European Union is partnering with the Ministry on a strategic level and has been involved since the beginning in 2018. We are very glad to be part of this success.
Through 5 sub-themes, Cairo Water Week will tackle topics such as water governance, integrated investment planning, and the latest technological advances. As a strategic partner in Cairo Water Week, the EU is organizing a number of high-level regional events, together with the Union for the Mediterranean, African Development Bank, and Finnish Water Forum.
طبعا المخرجات بتاعة المؤتمر أكيد هتساعد في كوب 26 وهتساعد في مؤتمر دكار، واحنا ان شاء الله في خلال هذا المؤتمر هنوقع اتفاقيه مع الوزير السنغالي للتعاون في تنظيم مؤتمر دكار.
Under the Team Europe initiative for integrated water and food security, the EU, together with European member states and European financing institutions, are cooperating to set the blueprint for transformational change to address water scarcity.
This spring, the European Union offered a new agenda for the Mediterranean to stimulate a long-term socio-economic development and recovery. For Egypt, the EU contribution could represent up to 1 billion euros between now and 2027, mobilizing nearly 9 billion euros of additional investments in the country.
Cairo Water Week 2021, with the support of the EU, is once again driving the change towards sustainable access to safe drinking water and sanitation, and a water-secure world. A secure water world is emerging as a top human development priority on the Sustainable Development Agenda. To this end, Cairo Water Week 2021, the fourth in a series of annual water conferences, is marking this year's edition with the theme Water, Population and Global Change, Challenges and Opportunities.
Cairo Water Week is becoming the biggest water-related event in the region. The European Union is partnering with the ministry on a strategic level and has been involved since the beginning in 2018. We are very glad to be part of this success.
Through 5 sub-themes, Cairo Water Week will tackle topics such as water governance, integrated investment planning, and the latest technological advances. As a strategic partner in Cairo Water Week, the EU is organizing a number of high-level regional events, together with the Union for the Mediterranean, African Development Bank, and Finnish Water Forum.
طبعا المخرجات بتاعة المؤتمر أكيد هتساعد في الكوب 26 وهتساعد في مؤتمر دكار، واحنا ان شاء الله في خلال هذا المؤتمر هنوقع اتفاقيه مع الوزير السنغالي للتعاون في تنظيم مؤتمر دكار.
Under the Team Europe initiative for integrated water and food security, the EU, together with European member states and European financing institutions, are cooperating to set the blueprint for transformational change to address water scarcity.
This spring, the European Union offered a new agenda for the Mediterranean to stimulate a long-term socio-economic development and recovery. For Egypt, the EU contribution could represent up to 1 billion euros between now and 2027, mobilizing nearly 9 billion euros of additional investments in the country.
Cairo Water Week 2021, with the support of the EU, is once again driving the change towards sustainable access to safe drinking water and sanitation, and a water-secure world. A secure water world is emerging as a top human development priority on the Sustainable Development Agenda. To this end, Cairo Water Week 2021, the fourth in a series of annual water conferences, is marking this year's edition with the theme Water, Population and Global Change, Challenges and Opportunities.
Cairo Water Week is becoming the biggest water-related event in the region. The European Union is partnering with the ministry on a strategic level and has been involved since the beginning in 2018. We are very glad to be part of this success.
Through 5 sub-themes, Cairo Water Week will tackle topics such as water governance, integrated investment planning, and the latest technological advances. As a strategic partner in Cairo Water Week, the EU is organizing a number of high-level regional events, together with the Union for the Mediterranean, African Development Bank, and Finnish Water Forum.
طبعا المخرجات بتاعه المؤتمر اكيد هتساعد في كوب 26 وهتساعد في مؤتمر دكار، واحنا ان شاء الله في خلال هذا المؤتمر هنوقع اتفاقيه مع الوزير السنغالي للتعاون في تنظيم مؤتمر دكار.
Under the Team Europe initiative for integrated water and food security, the EU, together with European member states and European financing institutions, are cooperating to set the blueprint for transformational change to address water scarcity.
This spring, the European Union offered a new agenda for the Mediterranean to stimulate a long-term socio-economic development and recovery. For Egypt, the EU contribution could represent up to 1 billion euros between now and 2027, mobilizing nearly 9 billion euros of additional investments in the country.
Cairo Water Week 2021, with the support of the EU, is once again driving the change towards sustainable access to safe drinking water and sanitation, and a water-secure world. secure water world is emerging as a top human development priority on the Sustainable Development Agenda. To this end, Cairo Water Week 2021, the fourth in a series of annual water conferences, is marking this year's edition with the theme Water, Population and Global Change, Challenges and Opportunities.
Cairo Water Week is becoming the biggest water-related event in the region. The European Union is partnering with the Ministry on a strategic level and has been involved since the beginning in 2018. We are very glad to be part of this success.
Through 5 sub-themes, Cairo Water Week will tackle topics such as water governance, integrated investment planning, and the latest technological advances. As a strategic partner in Cairo Water Week, the EU is organizing a number of high-level regional events, together with the Union for the Mediterranean, African Development Bank, and Finnish Water Forum.
طبعا المخرجات بتاعة المؤتمر اكيد هتساعد في مؤتمر دكار، واحنا ان شاء الله في خلال هذا المؤتمر هنوقع اتفاقية مع الوزير السنغالي للتعاون في تنظيم مؤتمر دكار.
Under the Team Europe initiative for integrated water and food security, the EU, together with European member states and European financing institutions, are cooperating to set the blueprint for transformational change to address water scarcity.
This spring, the European Union offered a new agenda for the Mediterranean to stimulate a long-term socio-economic development and recovery
okay, alles
for
klar. Gut, dann weiß ich
Egypt.
Bescheid. Ich versuch's
The
mal.
EU contribution
Ist nicht sicher.
would represent up to 1 billion euros between now and 2027, mobilizing nearly 9 billion euros of additional investments in the country.
Cairo Water Week 2021, with the support of the EU, is once again driving the change towards sustainable access to safe drinking water and sanitation, and a water-secure world.
Good morning, everyone. Could you please take your seats so we can start the session? Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I would like to welcome all of you to this seminar that will discuss today the Team Europe initiative and the support that Team Europe is providing and will provide in the future to the water sector in Egypt, for which we, European Investment Bank, we have organized this seminar that we have divided in 3 segments. I would like, first of all, to welcome Dr. Ibrahim Mohamed, that is representing the Minister Abel Atid, who has not been able to join us for other commitments this morning. I would also like to welcome also Dr. Sayed Ismail, who is a Deputy Minister for Housing and Utilities, Youth and Communities, and Excellency Ambassador Christian Berger, Ambassador to the European Union. Also, we'll have Flavia Palanza, Mrs. Flavia Palanza, who is the Director of Operations for the neighborhood countries at the European Investment Bank, that will be joining us in the morning online. So during the morning also we'll have a second segment where we'll have a distinguished panel of several representatives of the Development Partners Group working in Egypt that will discuss several aspects of the water sector in Egypt. And we will conclude with the way forward and closing remarks made by Minister Al-Massad from the International Cooperation Ministry, who unfortunately also was not able to join us today because of traveling commitments. So without further delays, I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Flavia Palanza, who is the Director of Operations for outside the European Union in the neighborhood countries, who is joining us online. So good morning, Flavia.
Good morning, Alfredo, and thank you very much.
The floor is yours.
Good morning, Excellencies, dear ministers, dear participants, dear colleagues. It is really my pleasure and it is an honor to welcome you here and to open this seminar on the challenges and on the opportunities of financing projects in the water sector. Water is the source of life, but it is also the resource that has been most affected by the climate change, especially in our Mediterranean region. With growing challenges such as water pollution and degraded water-related ecosystems, the importance of sustainable investments and of improvement management of the water sector has become even more apparent. However, unfortunately, the financial and the technical resources are not sufficient to meet the sector's huge needs, and the toll that the pandemic has taken on the public budgets all over the world has only exacerbated the situation. To address this challenge, all the stakeholders involved have to act collectively. And I sincerely commend our Egyptian partners, and if I may say so, friends, for their engagement in the water issue and in the organization of the Cairo Water Week, which is really an excellent example of the ways that governments, partners, and civil society can join forces in order to make the ambitious Agenda 2030 a reality. At the European level, we are committed to apply to the water sector the approach which we initiated in 2020 in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, in which we defined the Team Europe. It's an approach which aims at fostering an integrated approach, combining policy dialogue, technical assistance, grants, guarantees, and loans in order to optimize the utilization of donors' and financiers' resources. Egypt has developed a set of high-level objectives for the sector, aiming inter alia at securing access to and improving the overall quality of water, rationalizing its usage through a new management system, and expanding modern irrigation systems. The comprehensive Egypt Vision 2030 vision and the National Strategy for Water Supply and Sanitation are excellent frameworks for policy dialogue and to guide investment in priority areas and projects in the water sector. The cooperation between the EU and Egypt has been exemplary, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank you very warmly, Excellency, Mr. Minister Dr. Said, Minister Dr. Mohamed Abel. I know that you're not here, but your representative, Dr. Raid Mohammed. Thank you for your presence today and also for having accepted to enlighten us further with your global strategy. As the largest lender to the water sector to date, and with more than 66 billion for over 1,400 projects, the IB considers water security and climate change adaptations as top priorities. We lend and we channel grants to public or private utility companies, to national or local authorities, or directly for project finance deals. And we never operate alone. We have traditionally been working in close cooperation with the European Commission and with other EU partners such as the AFD or the KfW, or international development banks such as the World Bank or the BRD. And as I said before, we are very keen to pursue this cooperation in the framework of the Team Europe initiative. In Egypt, so far, we have been providing financing for 1 billion euro to support 13 projects in the water and in the wastewater sector. For instance, we have supported 2 phases of the Integrated Water Services Program, the Kafr el-Sheikh Wastewater Treatment Plant and the Alexandria West Wastewater Treatment Expansion Project, which will contribute to reduce the level of pollution in the Lake Marriott and Mex Bay and again in our Mediterranean Sea. Other projects are now starting to be implemented, such as the Fayoum wastewater expansion and the very high priority Kitchener Drain project. More globally, the bank, and we call us with pride the EU Climate Bank, will continue to support a sustainable recovery of the water sector with investments in the order of about 3 billion a year, both inside and outside the EU. As I mentioned earlier, investment in water requires mobilizing all possible resources to complement and to support constrained public budgets. Let us note in this context that investors, be them public or private, are increasingly interested in the impact of their financing has on projects, and they ask for assurances as to where the funds go. And this is an opportunity which we must all grasp. To that effect, the EIB started issuing dedicated bonds, which we called the Sustainability Awareness Bonds, and which guarantee that the funds collected are used for projects which make a significant contribution towards the SDGs. The first issuance dates back to 2018. It was for 500 million euro. It was dedicated only to water projects, and it was twice oversubscribed. And we are pleased and we welcome to the fact that Egypt did the same successfully, twice already, with the first green bond issuance in 2020, followed by second one in 2021. Yet again, an excellent example of spreading best practices and mobilizing private funding, targeting particular water consumption and coastal protection. Looking forward, we, the EIB, are committed to supporting strategic investment in Egypt in line with the EU new agenda for the Mediterranean and the EU economic investment plan, of course, in coordination with our partner countries and Egypt and our European partners as well. To conclude, I take this opportunity to express my warm thanks to Her Excellency Dr. Rania, Minister of International Cooperation, and to Ambassador Christian Berger, the head of the EU delegation in Egypt, for the quality of our permanent dialogue and for the cooperation, which are both key factors for success. I would also like to welcome and to thank our peer institution panelists who will illustrate how we can and how we must continue to act collectively in the water sector, but also beyond, in all areas where combination of our expertise, of our resources and instruments can make a real impact to people's life. I'm sure that our exchanges will be extremely stimulating today, as they have been over the whole Cairo Water Week. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Flavia. I think also I invite you to stay online now for the next speech. I think at the end of the high-level speech, I think we can take maybe one or two questions. So now I invite Dr. Ibrahim, that is representing Excellency Mohamed Abdelati, Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation.
So good morning. Can you hear me now? Good morning for all of you. On behalf of His Excellency, Dr. Mohamed Abdelati, Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation, I want to thank you, all of you. I want to thank European Union for this invitation to attend this important session for us, for Egypt. I want to thank all of you who are attending. I welcome all of you on behalf of His Excellency in Cairo Water Week 2021. So in that, let me just give you a brief about the current situation for water management in Egypt as a Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation. And I think all of you, you know what are the challenges, what we are faced nowadays in Egypt in water management. Specifically, the gap between supply and demand. We have a limited source for water, resources for water. Meanwhile, we have increased demand with time, for many reasons, increased population, and also we also have a big challenges with the water quality. Water quality is very important for us. Other challenges we face in Egypt. In that case, the ministry, in cooperation with the EU, and I want to thank EU for that, we put a plan for National Water Resource Plan in the period 2017-37. So we put a plan 2017-37, these 20 years, and this plan depends mainly on 4 pillars. The 4 pillars are: the first one, development of new water resources, and in that case also the EU and the EU institutions and the bank, they have a big role in that. I'm just saying about the seawater desalination and other water resources. So we have also a lot of achievement in that pillar, very important. The most important part for us, the other pillar, about the water conservation, and this pillar, this is what we can control with a high percentage for water conservation, and the other pillar is about improvement of the water quality, and it's a very important pillar is the institutional adjustment and have the enabling environment to implement this plan. Let me talk about the projects, what we are now, the situation now. I'm talking about the water conservation pillar specifically. The ministry took a step, a very important step in that case. If you are following our projects, so we took now, we have a national program about the branch canal rehabilitation. And may I give a brief about the situation in water management in Egypt and water distribution. As you see, we have one source for water, the River Nile, water released from High Aswan Dam, and then to the carriers and the main canals, and then it ends with the branch canal. This is the last part in the network about the governmental control completely. And this part is very important because it's working through rotational system on and off days. And if we adjust adjustment of this branch canal situation, and afterwards the tertiary and the MESCA, and then afterwards the on-farm, this is very important that we started this project. We have a plan to rehabilitate 20,000 kilometers of canals. We started with 7,000 kilometers, and we are about to finish this program in next June 2022. We reached around 3,000 kilometers now from the 4 canal rehabilitation. About the MESCA rehabilitation, this is now the program. It's a mega program now about the MESCA rehabilitation with the modern irrigation. Already we started this project because we are going to cover now all the old lands by branch canal rehabilitation, MESCA rehabilitation at the tertiary level, and modern irrigation in the old lands. We estimate this land to be 3.72 million per to be implemented in 3 years. So this is the program, and already the EU, through the EBRD and EU, already we have a big role, as we hear now about the Kitchener Drain project. Kitchener Drain project is a very important project for us because it's an integrated project. It involves many ministries, and specifically Ministry for Water Sources, Ministry of Housing, Ministry of Environment, and Local Development. This is very important for us. So thank you for this project. Already started. Already you guys working on all the activities. The ministry also, we are working in different lines for our project. I'm just talking now about this pillar, water conservation, because this is very important for us. Also, the ministry, and maybe I have a discussion with my colleagues in the EU. We started also, we have a protocol of cooperation. His Excellency, our minister, with Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Finance, and other national banks, we have a protocol of cooperation because all of you, after the branch canal, any investments, even so the MESCA and the modern irrigation and these techniques, we have a cost recovery. So, and we have to find a simple way to finance these projects because the farmers will pay the costs. So we have a protocol of cooperation. The protocol of cooperation allows National Bank to finance these projects, the modern irrigation and the necessary rehabilitation through agriculture cooperatives and the farmers themselves. So recently we signed this protocol and we are on the way to start implementation. That's why I'm also the support of the EU in that is very important. And I'm talking about the software part because also if we go to the National Water Resource Plan and what has been developed in technical big support of the EU, we will find the big part about the importance of involving the users. That's why the soft part, what we call the soft part of the projects, is the Branch Canal Association and the Water User Organization, the UNESCO Water User Association. This is very important for the capacity building for both, for the staff and the ministry staff. And these projects in good cooperation with Ministry of Agriculture. Because just to leave the Branch Canal, any projects after this should be, we have a good cooperation between the ministry. Also, we have many other projects about how can you fill the gap between the supply and the demand, and if you also are following about this treatment plant, just to have the use of drinking water and to find a way to overcome all these challenges. So other projects through the North Coast also, but because the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation, as I mentioned, putting this National Water Resource Plan, not only the ministry, but with other 10 ministries. And specifically, the most important for us, Ministry of Housing, of course, Ministry of Agriculture, and the environmental part, and so on. So 10 ministries shared the National Water Resource Plan. So I'm calling about water quality, and we have a good coordination with the Ministry of Housing at that point, and I see that there is a big cooperation between also Ministry of Housing and EU and in that field for the water quality. And so we have many projects started soon through the National Water Resource Plan. So what I conclude that already in my speech, that already we have a plan, we have activities, we have our development partners, and specifically so EU and the EU institutional banks. I want to thank them for that. And we are going towards to overcome all these challenges for water management. And I will thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ibrahim, for giving us an overview of the activities of the Ministry on Irrigation and the opportunities. And now I would like to give the floor to Excellency Sayed Ismail, the Deputy Minister of Housing, Utilities, Rural Communities. Thank you.
So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, water friends, development partners, colleagues. First of all, I want to express the gratitude and thanks to AIB for convening this important seminar and session. And I would like also to congratulate our colleagues in the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation for the successful launching for the 4th Cairo Water Week 2021. It's of my great pleasure to participate in this session to present the current situation of the drinking water and sanitation sector in Egypt in light of the available opportunities to overcome the challenges of the sector and also achieve all development goals of the Egyptian National Strategy, SDS, and also United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Egypt has made a significant progress in providing access to both safe drinking water and sanitation services. The current coverage for safely managed drinking water currently in Egypt, 98.7%, 100% for urban areas, and about 97.4% for rural areas. And the current safely managed sanitation is about 67%, in which we have 96% in urban areas and 40% in rural areas. The government strategy to manage water scarcity and sustainability for the utility sector was through 3 pillars. The first one, to find alternatives, sources of drinking water through desalination water in coastal governorates. This is, of course, in addition to the River Nile, which we are relying on about more than 90% of the fresh water and surface water on the River Nile. Desalination stands the most promising alternative to provide the potable water increased needs for the coastal governorates across the Mediterranean and Red Sea. We are now on the phase of completing the first desalination plan that has been launched in 2017, aims to reach 1.3 million cubic meter a day of desalination. And now we are already finished by 81 desalination plants in Egypt with a total capacity of about 914,000 cubic meter a day. And there are 11 desalination plants under construction with a total capacity 465,000 cubic meter a day. This is to achieve a total capacity of 1.38 million cubic meter a day. In 2014, I guess the desalination capacity was almost something like 80,000 cubic meter a day. So we moved like 16, 17 times just in these 7 years. But this is not the end of the story for desalination. The government of Egypt, through the Ministry of Housing, has developed the strategic plan for desalination to cover the seawater desalination to providing drinking water needs covering the following 30 years till 2050, with a total capacity of 6.4 million cubic meter a day through different 4 pillars of this strategy. The first pillar, to provide the drinking water needs to meet the current requirements and the future increase of population, and to provide the water needs to stop the long transmission pipeline of the surface water to governorates like Matruh, Sinai, Red Sea. You can imagine we had transmission pipelines exceeds 400 kilometers and 500 kilometers. And you can imagine how the stress on the energy demand and also the leakage issue, etc. The third pillar, to replace the surface water by desalination water in coastal governorates. And the final one is to provide the drinking water needs required for the new urban development communities. You see now in Egypt, we have development everywhere. So we decided on the coastal zones to go for desalination, like in Al Alamein city, like in Ras Al Hikmah, new city, like in Suez, new city. So this all development in these areas will be depending mainly on desalination. The second pillar is the groundwater. And here is how Egypt is managing the different resources. It's some sort of optimization from the different resources. For example, the governorates around the valley and the River Nile, depending on the surface water, fresh water from the River Nile. When we go to the coastal zones, Mediterranean and Red Sea, here is desalination. But we still have some governorates, like the New Valley, for example. It's away distance from the coastal areas and also from the River Nile, in which we depend on the groundwater. So groundwater for us is another source of that could supplement the scarce of fresh water in the areas with no access to the River Nile and the seawater, such as the Oasis and the New Valley Governorate. Currently, the existing capacity of the groundwater drinking facility from the underground water is about 2.8 million cubic meter a day. And we have a future plan to be increased by 1.1 million cubic meter a day. The third important pillar is the reduction of non-revenue water. Through the expansion in installation of household water meters, decrease the losses in potable water networks, use of water-saving fittings, and media awareness plans for water conservation. When coming to the sanitation services and wastewater use, and to maximize the usage of the available water resources, Ministry of Housing is working on the reuse of the treated wastewater through the following: expansion in construction of wastewater treatment plants in Upper Egypt, and according to the importance of Upper Egypt region, which has been lagging for water and sanitation infrastructure projects in many years, the government decided to excessively intervene with a big program for implementation of wastewater treatment plants in Upper Egypt to provide the citizens with the proper sanitation services and to protect the River Nile from pollution. And we have about 60 tertiary and secondary wastewater treatment plants in Upper Egypt have been executed during the last 3 years, with a total capacity of 1.4 million cubic meter a day. There are currently over 210 wastewater treatment plants, post-secondary and tertiary, under construction in Egypt for the remaining governorates, with a total capacity about 6 million cubic meter a day. Also, the upgrading of the existing wastewater treatment plants and improving the quality of treated wastewater in different governorates, taking into consideration the monitoring and the evaluation of treatment plants, sampling results, operation and the maintenance procedures, and the compliance with the standards and the governing laws. Treatment and reuse of agriculture drains for irrigation, like Al Mahsama project, 1 million cubic meter a day, and the Bahr al Bar project, 5.6 million cubic meter a day, which is the biggest treatment facility in the world, recently awarded 3 Guinness Record certificates. This is for utilization and the cultivation of about 500,000 acres in Sinai. Making use of the sludge resulting from sewage treatment plants and converting it into energy is another pillar that we are working currently in Egypt in this sector. As used in El Gabal Al Asfar, Alex East wastewater treatment plant, and the planned projects in Abu Rawash and Alex West in Alexandria. Regarding the rural areas, which is the main challenge in Egypt, the government has made great and remarkable attention to develop the rural areas and to provide decent life for the citizen. The National Rural Sanitation Program, NRSP, that was initiated in 2015 to increase the wastewater coverage in rural areas, has become part from the presidential flagship initiative, Haya Karim, Decent Life, for the National Integrated Development for Rural Egypt, not only in water and sanitation, but water, sanitation, energy, electricity, biogas, roads, in all different services that should be provided to the rural areas. This initiative, Haya Karima, aimed at provide a decent life for the citizen nationwide in coordination with the civil society organizations, which targeting about 58 million of the Egyptian citizens living in rural Egypt. Coming to the international cooperation funded projects. We are currently working with more than 16 development partners in this sector in about 39 development programs with a total fund about 5.4 billion USD. 5.4 billion USD, including currently about 2.2 billion USD with EDBs, European Development Partners. So we have a very strategic continued partnership with our partners like EU, EIB, World Bank, African Development Bank, and others. And here is a sample of the programs that are under construction with our development partners. We have like what we heard from Ms. Flavia, improved water and wastewater services program, WS3.1, to serve 4 million capita in governorates like Beheira, Sharqiyya, Gharbiyya, Damietta, with a total budget of about 300 million euros, funded by KfW, EIB, AFD, and EU. Also, we have the improved water and wastewater services program 2, IWSP2, in governorates in Upper Egypt, like Qina, Sohag, Asyut, and Minya, with a total budget of 300 million euros. Kafr al-Sheikh also 165 million euros to serve 62 villages inhabited by 400,000 capita. Devolution of Kitchener drain. This is currently under implementation in the early stages. So we expect within the coming 2-3 years, we will find difference in those areas with Kitchener drain. In Gharbiyya, Kafr al-Sheikh, Daqahliya, to improve water quality by 500,000 cubic meter a day with a total budget of 240 million euros. Also, we have the pollution of Lake Qarun and Fayoum Governorate. This is also, we start the arrangement for the implementation. We are about to start the implementation on the ground with the contractors. Also, we have the Sustainable Rural Sanitation Service Program, SRSSB, Phase 1 and 2, to improve the water quality of the drains and improve sanitation services for 6 governorates: Dahliya, Sharqiyya, Beheira, Munufiyya, Gharbiyya, Damietta, with a total cost of about 1.15 billion USD. And here you find the Ministry of Housing Utilities sector speaking about devolution of drains. And here is the key issue. Here comes the integration. Here comes the cooperation between the different line ministries responsible for the water resources and irrigation. And without this cooperation and the integration, we couldn't succeed to overcome a lot of our challenges during the last period. Even when I spoke about the desalination, this desalination plan has been developed together with the Ministry of Housing, Ministry of Electricity and Energy, and also Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation. And this is the key of the movement and the reform that we are seeing everywhere in Egypt currently. We have also Abu Rawash wastewater treatment plant, one of the biggest facility in Egypt. It will be 2 million cubic meter a day. This will be the second one after Jabal al-Asfar, 2.5 million cubic meter a day. And the unserved villages around Al-Rahawi drain to improve the water quality with total capacity 2 million cubic meter a day with a total budget of 390 million USD for Abu Rawash from African Development Bank and 45 million Kuwaiti dinar for a Rahawi drain from Arab Fund for Economic and Social Development. We have also a program for integrated rural sanitation in Upper Egypt, Luxor, to serve a population of about 500,000 capita with a total cost of about 100 million euros. Our way forward. We have a very important pipeline still need to be completed for the coming 2-3 years. We have currently Hilwan wastewater expansion program to increase the capacity and upgrade the treatment level of the existing Hilwan wastewater treatment plant by a further 250,000 cubic meter a day, including wastewater treatment up to tertiary level, sludge, dewatering, and anaerobic digestion. In addition, it covers the upgrade of the entire existing plant to tertiary treatment and sludge facilities. We have also on the coming pipeline, the extension of Abu Rawash wastewater treatment plant. This is the fourth extension. Currently, we are about to finish the third extension for Abu Rawash with a total capacity 1.6 million cubic meter a day. And we are planning for the fourth extension for another 400. Also, we have Abu Rawash sludge management and digesters and the biogas generation. This is also for the future pipeline. We are preparing now regarding the studies required, etc. Coming to strengthening the national sector framework. This is CAPEX, this is investments. But to utilize this CAPEX and investments, we needed also to work about the strengthening of the national sector framework on a national wide. We are currently working on development of the national water and sanitation sector strategy towards efficiently meeting 2050 needs and improve the performance of the Egyptian water and sanitation sector to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 6.2, and develop the action plan to assure effectiveness of service delivery and lead the sector development. Then we have also a lot of work to be done in the policies and the procedures required to provide the enabling environment for the service providers. And when we say service providers, we mean both public and the private sector. And allow the government to monitoring and evaluation the performance of the service providers, such as the water and sanitation tariff that allow for sustainable cost recovery considering the socio-economic tariff. The draft water law has been finished and the procedures will be followed for the discussion and the approval of the parliament. At the end, I would like to extend my thanks and appreciation to all of you. Wish you all the best with successful and inspiring discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sayed, for this comprehensive view of the sector from the point of view of the ministry. And then I would like to give the floor to Ambassador Berger. A seminar talking about Team Europe. I think we have the best speaker to talk about the perspective of Europe on this subject.
Good morning. Thank you, Alfredo, and thank you, Flavia, for this opportunity to be here with at a session organized by the EIB, which is, as you all know, the house bank of the European Union and a very close partner around the world in financing projects and programs, both of strong and great interest to the European Union itself, but of our partner countries as well, like here in Egypt. Also, thank you, Dr. Ibrahim and Dr. Said, for explaining what Egypt is doing and where you are and where you think that the international community and the European Union, both the Commission but also the European Investment Bank, could be of help and support. And I will talk, as Alfredo has suggested later on, a little bit about a new concept, this Team Europe initiative, because it's not only the Commission, it is not only the bank or the banks, because we also have EBRD, but it's also the member states and their banks and their institutions that we will try to bring together in support of important initiatives and projects. Now, when we look at this Water Week and the previous Water Weeks, the last 3 ones and this one, there is one overarching theme, and that is that water is a requisite for human survival and dignity and a fundamental basis for the resilience of both societies and the environment. Water is vital for human nutrition and health and essential for the ecosystem, for agriculture, energy, and the overall planetary security. Water is a natural resource, unfortunately a finite natural resource that sustains life and fuels our economies. The integrated management of water resources is a prerequisite for human development and environmental protection that benefits all, women and men, the rich and the poor, the highly industrialized and the least developed, our generation and all future generations. The water sector is indeed a top priority for the European Union. This topic is and will remain one of our main pillars of intervention. Investing in human capital while ensuring the presence of strong, cautious public awareness alongside investment in infrastructure will go hand in hand, while ensuring a strong public-private partnership. Water is the sector in which the European Union has been consciously active over a decade, thinking extensively about improving the quality of life through expanding water and wastewater coverage, as well as enhancing quality water resources and promoting the joint cooperation of European and Egyptian institutions throughout the water cycle. The European Union has been responding to these challenges since 2007 with more than 550 million euros in grants, leveraging concessional funds of nearly 3 billion euros in this sector with other European financial institutions. Our existing co-funded programs extend to over 16 Egyptian governorates, providing nearly 25,000 permanent job opportunities and nearly 600,000 short-term job opportunities, mainly in rural areas. This shall help in improving the quality of life of nearly 25 million inhabitants in Egypt by the year 2025. With all what is being done, we still believe there is need for more to match the well-deserved aspirations of the Egyptian people. From our side, the European Union will not stand still and will take the first steps within our renewed partnership priorities with Egypt. And you may have heard Commissioner Vaheli a couple of days ago speak about this, towards creating a successful partnership between private and public enterprises through the launching of the Team Europe initiative on integrated water and food security, and aiming at integrating 2 key dimensions. And those 2 key dimensions are the regulatory and the people-to-people aspects. And this is in order to provide an effective socioeconomic response to the COVID-19 pandemic impact. The proposed Team Europe initiative is a brand under which the European Union development partners, that's the EU itself, that's the EU member states, these are the EU financial institutions, will be at the forefront of a sustainable food system and integrated water management. We will be addressing the main challenge faced by agriculture, for example, in water productivity and water scarcity, while also adapting to climate change, improving environmental protection and strengthening rural communities. We will be looking at how water is the key to socioeconomic development. So this is not just about looking after the environment, as this is a key theme nowadays, but it is also finding the path to green and blue growth and to greater resource efficiency. Furthermore, acknowledging the financing gap and the important role of the private sector participation, we took the first step towards creating a successful partnership between private and public enterprises. In February this year, the European Union adopted a new agenda for the Mediterranean. This new agenda is based on the conviction that by working together and in a spirit of partnership, common challenges can be turned into opportunities in the mutual interest of the European Union and its southern neighbors, and in particular, Egypt. This includes a dedicated economic and investment plan to spur the long-term socio-economic recovery of the southern neighborhood. And under the new European Union Neighborhood Development and International Cooperation Instrument, we will provide up to 7 billion euros for the next period, and this will be allocated to the implementation, which could mobilize up to 30 billion euros in private and public investment in this region. Egypt could be a major beneficiary of such an envelope, given the strong cooperation and the existing demands on the ground. Definitely, the proposed Team Europe initiative will be a key in utilizing a significant portion of these funds. Today's event helps us to re-emphasize the significant importance of the European Union-Egyptian cooperation in this field. Let me conclude by thanking once again all parties who are involved today. And today's event is a great moment to look back at what we have done right, what we have done so far, but it's also an opportunity to start looking forward and building on the outcomes that we have already achieved. Thank you very much.
I think a very interesting presentation. So I would like to open the floor if there is any question. Gentlemen, please. Yeah, maybe we can take one or two questions. There's a mic.
Thank you for the distinguished panelists. My name is Khaled El-Zoghbi from the US Embassy, Cairo, from the Foreign Commercial Services. We represent the Department of Commerce of the government of the United States. I would like to start by thanking Dr. Ibrahim and Dr. Syed for the information they shared with us today. And my question is that yesterday we had Mr. Mamdouh Raslan from the holding company, and he talked about the holding company strategic plan. And today, Dr. Ibrahim highlighted the water resource plan 2017-2037. And Dr. Ibrahim talked about the strategic plan for the desalination. So from my perspective, it's good to have plans, but the concern is, so I'm trying to refer to the law of distinguished return. So having many players trying to achieve the same goal, in some cases might be a disadvantage in case there is a lack of coordination. So my question is how the government of Egypt, through these key players, try to avoid this kind of reoccurrence, double work in some cases, and conflict, and might be happen during the implementation, so to seek the efficiency and the best return on investment. Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe I give the floor first to Dr. Ibrahim and then to Dr. Syed.
Thank you for your comments and your question. So as I mentioned that we put our national water resource plan in cooperation with other 10 ministries. And as I mentioned, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Housing are very important for us, and other ministries for the water quality and so on. But after we put the plan, you know, we have many committees, high committees. Maybe I can mention also something about the new law. In the new law, we have the new law. It's about to be issued, and the bylaw is ready. So we put, and already we have committees at the governmental, and the Prime Minister himself, including all the ministries and the minister, and of course also the Ministry of Water Resource as putting this plan. They are playing a key role in that. Meanwhile, we have, as I mentioned in my speech, so we have higher committees, high committees for coordination. We have a high committee with Ministry of Housing. We have a high committee with Ministry of Agriculture, with all involved parties. We met periodically, we discuss, and then the plans for all these ministries, as Dr. Said mentioned, all these plans are discussed together. Not only the National Water Resource Plan, but all the other plans are the same time. As Dr. Said mentioned about the amounts of water, what will come from the desalination and other investment, this is we put in the plan. And the investment of the National Water Resource Plan, it's not only an investment of Ministry of Water Resources only. We put all the investments for all the players. That's why when we put the plan, I thank the EU in their support. EU, including, of course, the EU delegation and the EPRD and KFW, because also KFW, I want to thank all the KFW because we have our approach. We put into consideration the JISA, Joint Integrated Sector approach. This approach is very important for us. When we put all the plan for all the investment or all the project and activities, what will be implemented till 2037. We put not only the projects for the Ministry of Water Resources, but all the projects and investment and the plans for other ministries. So at this point, we took into consideration all. Meanwhile, also, we put into consideration in the new law to involve the users, the end users, the French Canal Association and the higher committee till we reach the national level. They will be involved in the process about the participation. So this committee is already in place and working together. We meet periodically.
So if I am to respond for this question, thank you, Mr. Khalid Zoghbi, for this question. But actually, you have the right that you see a lot of water, a lot of people speak about the water. But I think this is not the problem, because we can all speak about water. Water become a global language now. So despite of English and French and Arabic, we can speak all water. But your question is all about rules and responsibilities. Rules and responsibilities. And here we have a very clear cutting edges between the different rules and responsibilities with the different line ministries and inside each ministry with the stakeholders. So Ministry of Water Resources and the Irrigation responsible for the Egyptian water resources, all the resources required for drinking water, required for industry, required for agriculture. So how to manage resources, this is the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation. This is why the strategic plan for Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation, it's about the resources itself. When we come to the Ministry of Housing, Utilities, and the Urban Communities, we speak only about our portion of interest, which is the drinking water. So all our strategies is regarding only drinking water. But the water, you know that there is a lot of interlinkage between sectors and others. So I take the water source from the River Nile, after the proper treatment, disposal for the receiving bodies, drains or whatever. So there is some cross coordination should be there. This is why I want to clarify the different in roles and responsibility. Ministry of Housing has its stakeholders. We have implementing entities, we have operation and the maintenance entities, and utility management. So under the Ministry of Housing, we have the utility sector, and under the utility sector, we have implementing entities like NABWSD and CAPO. Maybe this is the not optimum structure, and we are working on that structure currently. Maybe we need to refine or update the structure for the sector. This is part of our ongoing discussions. But we have entities responsible for implementation. Once a project is finished execution, then it handed over to the operator, which is the holding company, along with the different subsidiary company, along the different governorates, responsible for the daily service providing for the people in the different governorates. And we have also the fourth stakeholders, which is NUCA, New Urban Community Authority, with about 40 new cities in Egypt, starting from the first generation till the fourth generation, at which we currently have New Cairo City, 6 October City, New Al Alamein, New Capital, etc. All the water and wastewater facility for the new area in Egypt, it's under the umbrella of NUCA. But they are responsible about both implementation and service provision, service delivery. So I hope that with this clarification that I made it clear for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sayed. Thank you, Dr. Ibrahim. Is there any other question? Any issue, comments on the floor? Not then, I would like to thank the speakers for the presentations. They have been very instructive and thorough. Sorry, we have received a question from the question for His Excellency Ambassador Berger. Has it been decided how much of all the mentioned investments are planned to be directed to Egypt's water infrastructure, and in what types, desalination, wastewater treatment, etc.? And is the government's plans ambitious enough to preserve Egypt's water security?
Thank you. We are in the middle of discussing this with the authorities. We are working on what we call a flagship initiative. And that flagship initiative means we are pooling under the Team Europe initiative all the resources that we have, both from the Commission, the Member States, and the European Investment Bank. And water and sanitation will be one of these flagships, one of two flagship initiatives. So I'm not able to go into details right now, because we are at the moment on the basis of proposals from the government. We're discussing this, and we are drawing up the plan how we can bring all these financial resources together in order to finance the initiatives. And that's why Commissioner Vahey, who was here at the beginning of this Water Week, and he spoke about this initiative, had meetings in the last few days to take this forward. So at this very moment, I cannot go into greater detail, but we believe that Egypt, as we have heard from the two speakers before, is extremely serious in addressing the water challenges. And we as international community, as European Union, we are obviously ready to stand side by side with Egypt in challenging, in addressing these challenges by providing these initiatives.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think with these remarks, I think we can conclude this first part of the intervention of today, of this seminar. I think I would like to thank again the three speakers and Flavia, who is online, for their comments and participations. I think has provided a good insight of what is the water sector in general in Egypt and the opportunities and the way forward. And I think that I would like to thank them again very much. Thank you very much. So I think we can move to the second part of the seminar, which is a panel of discussion. I will, if time allows of our speakers, I will invite them to continue. Otherwise, I will ask the panelists to join us on the podium. Okay. So Thank you. Sorry, we were going to start the second part of the seminar, which is this panel of discussion. On my side, I only would like to introduce you the moderator of the panel, who is Kostas Souflis, who is a project manager of one of the projects with EIB's financing, the Kafel-Sake wastewater management plan, and he will make the introductions and will guide us during this discussion. Thank you, Kostas.
Thank you, Alfredo. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. With the very comprehensive introductions which were made by Dr. Ibrahim and Dr. Sayed about the Egyptian National Water Resources Plan 2017-2037 and the comments which were made about the desalination program that is included in the plan, I think we can go ahead with the roundtable itself. The roundtable is about sustainable financing for water and wastewater. And the roundtable will discuss issues which relate to the financing and implementation of the Egyptian National Water Resource Plan plus the desalination components, with the panelists sharing their views and presenting their intervention towards the implementation of the plan. The distinguished guests which will participate today in the panel include Mr. Almata Zabadi. He is the Managing Director of the Union for Mediterranean. Engineer Magdou Haslan, he is the Chairman of the Holding Company for Water and Wastewater. Ms. Siman Radwan, who is the Senior Water Expert in the Office of International Cooperation, Embassy of Switzerland. Mr. Francesco Toraro, Loan Officer of EIB. He is joining the panel remotely. Mr. Dr. George Dukes, Head of Division Water and Wastewater North Africa of KfW. Again, he is joining the panel remotely. Mr. Khalid Hamza, Deputy Head of Office of Egypt's Office of EBRD, and Mrs. Atka Ben-Meid, Head of Unit Water and Sanitation, Environment, Sustain and Finance in the AFD, the African Development Agency. So, going ahead, we will start the panel with the Union for the Mediterranean. The National Resources Plan presents a strategic framework for Egypt, as we heard previously. And in addition to that, the new Water Resources Law was ratified quite recently in the House of Representatives. So they both represent an institutional framework for investments. Based on your experience, would you like to amplify on the connection of enabling policies, legislation, and institutional arrangements to the attraction of good quality investments in the water sector? For Mr. Abadi.
Much. Do you hear me? Okay. First, I am Al-Mu'taz Abadi. I am the UFM Water Managing Director. I am responsible about setting up all the water issues across the Mediterranean. Thank you very much for the question, where this is actually represent the soul of our work in the Union for the Mediterranean. As you know, we are not a donor agency. We are not giving money, but we play a role as a facilitator within our member state, where also Egypt is playing a very, very, very important role in this organization. So in the work of the Union for the Mediterranean, when it comes to the water sector, we try to identify aspects within 3 pillars. The first one is to look after the way that we govern our water sector. Here we talk about the legal framework and the different regulation. And then the way we manage our water sector, here we look at the institutional setup and institutional framework. And the third pillar, how to boost investment. But the investment is not only to look at it, to go to Attica from AFD or KfW, is also to look at the resources within the sector which we call it, according to the Union for the Mediterranean Financial Strategy, is the best use of internal water sustainable measures, including the tariff, and how the government also try to play this element between being affordable and being sustainable at the same time, and to serve this services for the long term. It's not about only investment. And the key figure of the work of the Union for the Mediterranean in this regard is how to make the water sector contributing to the socio-economic development aspect. It's not about how to keep spending money to this sector and to look after how the water minister always seen by other ministers, especially the finance, as a burden. But no, we wanted to identify a means that the investment in water sector is the investment in the tourism, is investment on other sector in agriculture. I don't know how we can produce even some other aspects related to the normal jobs. The World Bank and also OECD had identified 3 out of 4 jobs related to the water sector. So the work is, we call it tri-dimensional. It's to enhance the situation at the national level, but also from the Union for the Mediterranean, we have the courage to talk to the donor. The donor themselves, when they put this checklist, they have also to consider specificities of certain countries, and it's good to put conditions, but also you have to consider that these conditions should move hand in hand by the reforms that are taking into the specific country. So the development of this UFM financial strategy, it happened not based on an expert opinion, it happened based on input from expert, but the leader were the country representative with hand-in-hand work coming from EBRD, EIB, EFD, KFW, and many other. What now we are happy to see that you are calling yourself EU team, which is very good, and hopefully that the UFM Secretariat will also advance with you, and we call it UFM Water Finance Team. Yesterday we brought also plenty of speakers from different countries in order to facilitate this policy dialogue, in order to enhance the investment in the Mediterranean, and with a special focus on Egypt. Thank you.
Under water and environment, the focus of the Union for the Mediterranean is on regional cooperation in the area of water, which focus on the promotion of better water governance, including water demand, supply management, and water financing. It's also known that the production of fresh water through desalination is a recurring need in the countries of this region. So would you amplify on how the UFM can facilitate and enhance the implementation of water sanitation desalination projects in Egypt by taking benefit of the regional experience and the promotion of regional cooperation? Egypt is a member of the UFM, as far as I know.
Egypt is a member at the UFM and is active member. And my boss actually is an Egyptian diplomat who is seconded by the Egypt government since 3 years. His name is Nasser Kamel, and yesterday he was sitting here beside the Minister of Water, Mr. Mohammed Abdelati, as well as with Christian Berger. And the topic was about what you are asking now. Topic was about desalination, one of them, but in more general context, how the UFM can facilitate an impactful dialogue. So the session about desalination brought around the table representatives from Spain, Morocco, Tunis, as well as from Egypt and also Jordan. So the objective had been identified for that session is how to bring these good experience from the north of Mediterranean country, where we have 27 member states, and many of them are active in desalination, especially Spain as an example, as well as we brought some other experience from the South Mediterranean, where we talk about not only culturally speaking, but also from investment point of view, that these can be fine-tuned and can be replicated. I cannot replicate everything successful in Spain and Egypt, but I can take some of it and localize it within the Egyptian governance and regulatory system. But the most important part is to tap over the measures that make this project successful, which can be replicated, which among them, the management style. When we talk about desalination, you cannot manage it, you cannot manage it with the normal old narrative of public sector. You need to look after commercial non-profit approaches in case you want to run a desalination facility that will produce water that is affordable for the citizen. So the Union for the Mediterranean financial strategy had identified in this regard an investment on the desalination, I mean in the non-conventional water resources as such, 20 actions. And the 20 actions, they are not only regional, they were also zoom into the country level. So we cannot impose ourselves to Egypt and tell them, okay, you have to do so and we need to come. If Egypt government through the Ministry of Water and Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because we are working with those two entities usually, request us to do a national policy dialogue, this will be absolutely happening we will start preparing for this. But this is not something that we will be shocked to be requested. We had done this exercise in Jordan, as an example, in 2019, before the pandemic. I don't know, I think you were in Jordan at that time, when we did toward the sustainability of the the water sector, financial sustainability of the water sector in Jordan. And it was really very, very helpful. Why? Because we brought together all different, I call them the Nexus ministries around the table with all donor community. And we had for 2 days a very frank discussion, and we came with a very short recommendation that required endorsement from the cabinet of the minister, where they afterward, it's not our success, but their success, they established this Nexus committee at high level to discuss the interconnected linked action between water and energy, because desalination, it is something nexus by nature. And also, it is very important to understand that applying the 3 T's when it comes to the water financing, it's something element of sustainability for desalination, because you need to make sure that the producer of water from desalination, they are producing it, and you need to regulate it in order to keep this water running in the same system, diversify resources, but at the same time, you need to give the citizen the water by the government, not by the producer of water. So this is, if there is no good regulation, desalination could be a burden. The second element that we can do also with Egypt, away from the national consultation at the national level, it also include bringing Egypt, as usual, they are contributing, not only participating, they are contributing to the development, to this regional dialogue that we are doing within our member state and beyond. And this is another element that we can do. What we can do also is facilitate technical assistance for certain specific project that can need to be enhanced capacity. Egypt had benefited also from the Union for the Mediterranean exercise on capacitating high-level officials how to access climate relevance project. The exercise had been developed since 2018 and is going on, where many people had the chance to get specific training how to develop a project that can attract GCF money by mobilizing donor agency, because the climate relevance money cannot go to the Ministry of Finance of the specific country, but they can go to the benefit of Egyptian government to EFD or to a accredited agency. So this exercise also we had done it. We received 3-4 Egyptian high-level participants in the Brussels, and last year they were online. So those are elements that the Union for the Mediterranean can do. But honestly speaking, this is the last point that I can discuss, and we can replicate when it comes to desalination. I am a Palestinian official, but I working in the Union for the Mediterranean, and I found that the biggest project in the Union for the Mediterranean was Gaza desalination facility project. And imagine that you need to talk to KfW that to put 50 million euros to a project in Gaza, and all of these governance issues were very fragile. So the Union for the Mediterranean had led a very important role on this. The specificity of Palestine, because there is conflict with Israel, we played a very good political role to facilitate. But the most important role was the issue related to how to convince the donor to invest on this project. So we guarantee the political things through quadripartite discussion. But it took us a lot of time in order to develop what we call it the project implementation manual and the donor handbook, where we identify actions that need to be taken by the government. First, you have to establish a water company. You have to establish a new water law. So this discussion looked very, very naive, but this is the checklist of the donor community. When they want to spend their money, they want to see the return. Nobody put a program to increase the money in Egypt, to increase the total amount of water in Egypt. Every donor community, they are saying that we want to enhance the socio-economic reality in X country, like in Palestine also. So the fact that the Union for the Mediterranean with donor community, because we are not split, when I leave here, I will be sitting with a French diplomat who is working with the AFD, and I will report to him. So this is the power that we can play as a regional organization, and helping country by benefiting from each other, either from experience, lesson learned, or by fundraising sometimes for in such cases like Gaza desalination facility or Khirbet al-Samra in Jordan, etc., etc. Thank you very much. And sorry for I am in a food poison, so I am not a body. I feel very bad. Can I sit there?
You feel free.
Because I have wow. Sorry.
In any case, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your input. I keep 2 or 3 points of interest: mature projects which can become bankable, and obviously a clear institutional framework that will secure investments. Turning to the holding company, Mr. Chairman, the holding company has been engaged for a long number of years in the implementation of the previous National Water Resource Plan and the current plan. So would you share with us your experience and which projects you have already completed? What is the effect of the water sector reforms on the implementation of these programs? And what is the expected coverage of the country in water and sanitation after the completion of these programs?
Thank you. It's a big question. We have to go back for some time because sector reform started here, as you know, 2004, and by forming the holding company. At that time, before 2004, there was some donor community exist in the country, but they are in position that they almost leaving because they found no hope to continue. Nobody is paying enough attention to the institutional reform of the sector. The government at that time decided to make the reform and issued the decrees for establishing the holding company and the regulatory board for Egypt. The holding company is a public-owned company. It's owned by the Ministry of Finance, and we established 25 companies all over Egypt, covering the 27 governorates. The community donor started to see some improvement on the sector. They started to see some people they can talk to, and they started to discuss, policies, strategies, and they started the World Bank project at that time. Also, the EU program, budget support program, which was one of the major support for the institutional reform that happened in Egypt, because at that time, there was no allocation for the holding company to start to, implement their plans. So we started to have the budget support program by EU, and this was like 3 phases in trenches, and every trench was requesting certain reforms to take place. And we succeeded to complete the whole reform for this budget support phase 1. And we started phase 2 as well. We finished maybe 2 phases of the budget support 2. And it's already completed. Again, it's against reform or benchmarks to be completed on the sector. Then we started to have other donors start to come and start to talk to us. We have the World Bank, as you know. We have the all the community donor in Egypt. USAID was heavily involved in the beginning, and then KfW, EIB, EBRD, all the other donors started to work with us. And I think my experience now with having the institutional setting currently now is helping a lot in addressing all the requirements of the country. Particularly when we established the holding company, the first task we did is the master plan. For the first time, to develop a complete master plan for water and wastewater up to the year 2037, which is identifying all the projects required for the country. So whenever we come have a donor with some allocation that you'd like to help us on, then we have project ready to move ahead. Before it was not like that, it was more of a random selection. But currently now we're still moving on the master plan even with the government investment plan. So which means that all the fund that coming from the government is based on the master plan that was developed, is being updated periodically. So I think most of our project was very successful because of the reform that took place 2004, and we started to continue. The sustainability issue was one of the main concern of all the donors. When they started with us, how this will be, I mean, is it just a reform for 1 year or 2 years? But I think I always say that, the train left the station and it will never stop and back again to the before the reform. So I think we are moving very, very aggressively actually on the reform, particularly as an operation and performance improvement on the holding company and the subsidiary company. We are serving almost like 100 million Egyptians, water and wastewater, because we're responsible for the governance, except the new communities. I think we started to have a lot of challenges facing us, and this donor community is trying to help us. Particularly, we have issues regarding the financial situation of the company. Tariff is not enough to cover our costs, so this put us in a very awkward situation with the deficit. We're working in a big deficit. Maybe it's getting better now. We have some of the companies start to recover their cost, maybe 70%, some others maybe 100%. We're still moving in this direction, but as you know, we are controlled by the tariff because we don't have the power of increasing tariff. Tariff is being done by the cabinet, and based on the regulation, the regulatory board is reviewing this. In addition, that we have another challenge with the excess labor. We have almost 140,000 employees. I think we're working on that. By retirement iteration, we always replace with what we need with a requirement of the specific specialist. And I think we're moving very quickly. So far, we are keeping at least the number of people, although of the increase on the number of plants and number of projects. We're still trying to train the people that we have now and to be directed to these new projects. Capacity building is one of the most important things that, that's why we have a lot of training activity that's going on. We are providing a lot of training centers. We have 4 technical schools that established for the holding company. Last week, actually, we established another 3. So we have 7 technical water and wastewater school that, will be used for all the technicians will be hired by our companies. And some of them, they started to continue for the engineering, faculty of engineering, and also when they come back, they are hired by our company. So you can see that the other challenge also, which is very important, and it's affecting some of the issues that has been discussed yesterday and today, which is the non-revenue water. We're talking about desalination plant. Yes, the desalination plant is needed, but then again, the desalination plant will be run by the investor or by the provider. And then he will pump the water in the network. And the network, we have a non-revenue water is still very high in many of our companies. And we are working on that. We have a very ambitious plan. We were able with some of the donor activity and help to divide the whole country to maybe 10,000 DMAs, district metering areas that, we are measuring the leakage in each area. And but again, this is very costly and very expensive. The government start to realize that it's very important and start to allocate some fund for us to do extra DMAs. This will help us because I'm not going to be happy to have the desalination water is being pumped to the network and then I lose 30% or 40% of it. This is a very expensive water, and I think this will cost the government a lot. So this is really some of the big challenges that we are facing. We don't lose the hope. We still continue, and I think seeing the donors continue with us is really giving the signal that we are moving on the right track. Government attention is very high now with allocating the fund and respecting the master plan. We are moving on in developing our projects and the strategies. And I think most of the other project that was mentioned by Dr. Sayed this morning, that big portion of it is being implemented by the holding company and subsidiary. Maybe over 30 billion Egyptian pounds worth of project from donor community is being implemented by the holding company and the subsidiary companies. I think they might be. Yep.
Excuse me for that. The holding company has also long experience in the cooperation with IFIs and IFI co-financing of development projects in the water and sanitation sectors. So based on your experience these years, would you amplify on lessons learned that could be considered to enhance and improve this cooperation with IFIs in the future?
I think one of a very important lesson that when we started the programs in 2005, I'll say the donor community started with us. Then we have too many players actually. And most of each player they come with sometimes with own program based on our discussion with them. But because the time lag that happened between the starting point and the implementation, a lot of changes happen. And who comes first, then we started to work with them. And then some of these activity will be replicated in another program. So I think one of the issues, maybe I share it with you. If you remember, when we have like 4 donors at the same time in one project, and everyone has its own policy and guidelines, and this was one of the big challenges that we faced, and we are trying to ask that we have only one guideline, and as you know, most of the donors they would like to keep or to have us implementing the guidelines they have. Although I suggest that we should start to review our guidelines and our procurement guidelines and start to establish these guidelines as one guidelines for Egypt, not for the donor community. When they leave, then we start to go back again to our guidelines. So I think this is one of the important lessons that we should work in the future by having too many parties at the same time.
Indeed, the fragment approach was one of the key issues that we faced when we started our cooperation initially. and this covered these issues as well. However, there are development projects, and also there are the operational aspects of these projects. And I would include in these operational aspects the non-revenue water, reclaimed wastewater, sludge reuse. So the question is, what, and you have actually worked on these issues so far. So again, on the basis of your experience, what would be your recommendations, lessons learned, which should be used actually taking forward these issues in the future?
I think we need a lot of time because I think during the implementation, we faced a lot of issues and a lot of problems. So I think operation and maintenance is one of the big issues that we have, because again, we inherited a very some of the facilities was in very bad shape actually, and we have to really to do a lot of renovation and a lot of rehabilitation to these facilities, and this was a big challenge. And at the same time, you have to have good trained people to do the work. So I think it's a big we can talk for 2 days about this, and I think the only thing that we have to start. This was a big issue for us. We have to really to struggle and start to face these problems as much as we can.
Thank you very much. But you actually mentioned one point about people, about human resources. And human resources, actually investment in human resources, is the theme of Mrs. Radwan, who I would like to invite to the floor. So could you please proceed on that? We need the mic. We need the mic. Mic.
Water and the wastewater sector for several years, actually for more than 2 decades, in infrastructure, institutional strengthening, policy dialogue, and awareness. We have observed that the water and the wastewater utilities face challenges in recruiting and retaining the staff. We as development partners believe that investment in infrastructure is money down the drain if not accompanied with appropriate investment in human resources to design and operate the infrastructure. As soon as staff are trained and skilled, they choose to leave the work for private sector that offer better benefits, career path, continuous education and training, good salaries and work culture. So what do utilities need to do? I think that a very important thing is that the sector has to profile itself as an attractive employer, offer a compatible and attractive compensation as much as they can, have a transparent incentive system, and promote career advancement and growth opportunities, and enhance the work culture and the code of ethics. So I would like to add, like how can we build the capacities of new staff? I think in tackling the programs that foster continuous connections between inexperienced staff and more experienced ones. This will help staff improve the skills and transfer the vital utility information from senior staff to the new hires. We also have to consider the job shadowing, career counseling, and internship opportunities. Water and wastewater related education must be tailored to the skills needed and link the job hands-on knowledge and know-how, and collaboration and knowledge sharing among the different utilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the intervention. Can we invite Mr. Francesco Dotaro of the EIB in Lux to take the floor? Francisco? Is there a problem with the connection? Is there any problem with your connection?
Mr. Francesco, can you hear us? We can't hear you. We still can't hear you. Can you try removing the headphone?
Seems there's some difficulty with the connection with Lux. So can we proceed with Dr. Jörg Dux of KfW?
Yes, with pleasure. Can everybody hear me?
I think we can.
Yes, thank you very much.
That's better. That's better.
Yes, thank you. It's a great pleasure and honor to be part of this panel, although virtually. I will not bore you with a presentation on the financial instruments we can provide. I will just allude on some issues the panelists already mentioned. So what is really key for contributing to finance the very, very high needs of infrastructure investments in the water sector is coordination. And I think the chairman of the holding company, Engineer Raslan, he already mentioned that the coordination among the donors was one of the challenges. And as KfW, we were in the lead of the Neighborhood Investment Facility program, multi-donor program on the improved water services program, IWSP1 and 2. And of course, after the sector reform was started in 2005, 2006, it was the first and one of the major investment programs. And we had all these complications with the coordination among all donors. But we made a lot of progress and then could also start an IWSP2, which is at the edge of implementation now. And we are now planning with all the lessons learned and all the best practices from IWSP1 and IWSP2, also a third phase of the program, which now falls under the Team Europe initiative. And as also the head of the EU delegation mentioned, the Team Europe initiative has one major focus on the water sector and tries also to enhance the coordination among the European and international donors. So I think we are really at the head of this initiative with I would say around about 200 million euro investment program as a successor program of the IWSP1 and IWSP2. Taking into account all the lessons learned and all the best practices from IWSP1 and IWSP2. So another important aspect which is needed in providing finance is the integrated water resource management approach. Therefore, you were talking about, for example, desalination, but also as non-conventional resources like the reuse of treated wastewater, for example, for the agriculture sector, should be taken into account. But also, as once again the chairman of the holding company mentioned, the unaccounted for water, because it's absolutely necessary to fit the network and to reduce the water losses. Which would then reduce the fresh water, which is very extensively and expensively produced. So this is a very, very important aspect. And the nexus between water waste, solid waste, to prevent the water sector from pollution is also an important aspect, but also the connection to the energy sector. And there we come again back to desalination. Desalination might be an additional complementary aspect for water supply in water scarce countries like Egypt, like Morocco, but for instance also Algeria and Tunisia. And we made some very, very important experiences in Tunisia and in Morocco with desalination coupled with the provision of energy from renewable energy resources. So we had some trials in Tunisia to couple desalination plant with wind energy. But it's very rare that you have a situation where you can install a desalination plant together with wind energy, because there are very few spots at the coast which provide sufficient and constant energy for the desalination. So therefore it was proven that the renewable energy for a desalination plant can be only the photovoltaic power plant. And we are now piloting a project which is a desalination plant in Tunisia, where we couple the desalination plant with a power plant of 7 megawatt through photovoltaic energy, and which is extendable to 14 megawatt, which entirely supplies the desalination plant of Zarat Gabes in the south of Tunisia at the coast. The important thing is that, you can produce the energy only through the day and mostly in summer times, of course, but how to store the energy? It is too expensive to install an energy storage around the desalination plant. So what you do is you have to connect it still to the national grid. And then the photovoltaic power produced during the day will exceed the demand of the desalination plant, but during the night the power has to come from the national grid. So therefore you have a balance, and that means you have a zero balance for the power supply for the desalination plant. So that is very important. And in the end, I see now a shared screen.
Sorry.
Sorry. And in the end, you have a zero balance, but at the same time, you have a very, very important contribution to mitigate the CO2 balance of the country as well. So this is a pilot project for desalination plant of 50,000 cubic meters production of desalinated water per day, extendable to 100,000. And at the same time, I would say, alleging a little bit the balance sheet of the desalination of the operations of the plant in producing photovoltaic power. And I would now, as my colleague Francesco tried to, I would now share the screen as well. I don't know whether this is working. So I hope you can see it. One of our newest financial instruments which we want to introduce is the Urban Water Catalyst Fund. This is an innovative financial offering which is divided into two stages. The one is the grant stage, and afterwards it's the fund stage, so the Catalyst Fund, and it should support utilities to increase performance and to come to a utility turnaround where then the utilities reach creditworthiness after 3 to 5 years to take over then major loans for their extension of the network and for their increase of performance in producing water and in treating wastewater. So it starts, the first step is a facility. It starts with a grant, providing grants for TA and capacity building to increase the performance, to show rapid results, and then to start with operational finance, with small loans, small concessional loans, medium-sized loans for infrastructure investments, to accelerate the performance improvement movement, and then afterwards to reach creditworthiness about 3 to 5 years to come, and then be eligible for risk mitigation for post-fund investments like further concessional loans, further loans from local banks, or further even inclusion of private sector participation through banks, and then making further progress to extend the networks and to extend the services to a wider range. So we will set up this fund at the end of 2022, and we start with a facility at the beginning or mid 2022. So therefore, utilities like the holding company and the affiliated companies should be somehow eligible for receiving support through the grant, through the Urban Water Catalyst facility, and then afterwards reaching the creditworthiness to be eligible for taking over concessional loans and further loans through the Catalyst Fund from 2022, 2023 onwards. So I will stop here and thank you very much for your attention, and open for questions and further discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Dux, for this informative intervention. We would like to invite next speaker, which is Mr. Khalid Hamza, proceed with his presentation.
Sorry, just to test if you can hear me now.
We can.
Thank you. Yes, we can. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, maybe before I just start the presentation, I would actually congratulate Engineer Mamdouh Raslan, because I heard this morning that now you've reached 40% connectivity in terms of wastewater and rural sanitation. And when EBRD started working, and we had our first project in 2014 that we signed with you in Kafr Sheikh, it was at 12%. So in 8 years, this is a quadrupling of the capacity, which is for those of us who work in the field know that this is an amazing achievement. And there's a Guinness Award. I think it should go to the hard work that was put into this, rather than to the size of the wastewater plants. But the bad news, I think, for you is that the challenges are actually growing and not reducing. We live in a world. Will you be putting on the presentation? Or? Well, until the presentation is put on, maybe just to explain, at least from the EBRD point of view, the context of the sector that we're in. It's one where in our countries of operation globally, we still witness water service gaps, especially in rural areas in some of the countries that we work in. Large wastewater infrastructure gaps, also specifically in this region. We do have a growing water demand. Maybe go on to the second slide right now. It's a growing water demand to meet, obviously, the needs of a growing population. This is certainly true for Egypt, but also growing industry, agriculture, and so forth, and energy, growing energy. All this needs more water. So at the same time, due to climate change, potentially shrinking water availability. And in that context, our municipal and environmental infrastructure sector. All right, thank you. And in that context, I think our municipal environmental infrastructure basically tries to address the gap, which is basically to address the service coverage gap, but also look at the aging infrastructure, deal with climate change, adaptation measures, and so forth. And we invest primarily through that unit in our bank, which accounts for approximately 60% of our infrastructure investment into water and wastewater activities across our countries of operation. The value add that our institution brings is certainly on ensuring the application of the environmentally sustainable solutions, which is very important in that sector. But one of the things that I would probably highlight most is that we'd like to promote more private sector participation and involvement in the sector. If we talk a little bit about the challenges, I think this is still true for Egypt despite all the achievement, and it's something that we would certainly continue to work on. And I think Engineer Mamdouh had already alluded to this, that is still in this vicious cycle of lack of financing that basically leads to, well, the lack of financing leads always to poorer operational efficiencies. Service quality is not up to the standard that you want to achieve, which again leads to insufficient tariff collection, due maybe to loss of efficiencies, but so cost recovery is impacted, and therefore subsidies continue to flow into that sector. And of course, low bankability of water companies globally, as I said, in our countries of operation, lead again to lack of financing, and it becomes a vicious circle: lack of financing, lower operational ability, and so forth. So this is something that still needs to be addressed by increasing our investments in that sector and making it more and more sustainable. On the challenges of increased water demand, obviously population growth is one of the factors that contribute to that heavily. Growing water needs also come from agriculture and industrial users, and we know Egypt is trying to also increase its industrial capabilities, so this will be one of the reasons why water demand would continue to increase in Egypt, an already very challenging environment. Climate change, I don't think I need to dwell on that, but that's obviously a big risk globally for increased water demand. On the other side, also there's water scarcity, so it's not just that there's more demand, but there's also less water in the system because of over extraction or non-renewable groundwater in certain areas, or just increasingly unreliable water supplies in terms of quality and quantity that continues to be in the system. So therefore, desalination is one of the solutions that this entire region is trying to grow on. The Gulf area has already started there, but North Africa is still lagging and continues to explore how to continue to invest. And we heard this morning that there's a lot of investment going into that. Maybe quickly on the desalination, I mean, to say that there are a number of new technologies that are being developed at the moment. These technologies include, for example, nano and biometric type of screens, which can be used and can reduce the cost of water generation by approximately 20 to 25%. New technologies like forward osmosis is also being explored that could also reduce the cost by about a third. So there's a lot of things happening on the desalination side, which makes it actually very difficult at this stage to take investment decisions, which would cost the sector a lot of money while new technologies are being developed. Finally, insufficient wastewater provision remains a challenge in our countries of operation, sometimes because it's a difficult area to access. And what exacerbates the issue is sometimes also the heavy industry contribution, that the effluent that comes from industry that gets mixed with the wastewater treatment, which makes it even more difficult to achieve the right level of service. So what we propose in terms of how to tackle this situation in our countries of operation, Egypt being one of them. First of all, to identify the opportunities. Obviously, with all these challenges means there's a lot of opportunities. The opportunities to improve the water source security, enhance water quality, and so on, by increasing water supply resilience, for example, or improving revenue collection is important. And we touched upon the non-revenue water. Reducing water losses is one of the key areas where investments should actually flow. Other opportunities is to improve the sewer network. Again, that's part of the NRW. Enhance the wastewater treatment and the sludge management. Reuse of sludge or biogas, for example, is important. With so many opportunities, it becomes imperative that also there's a focus on reforming water services in general. And it's a phased approach. We just heard from KFW, which actually I like the slide very much, the urban water catalyst, where actually it starts with a grant and then it moves slowly but surely into a more sustainable, financially sustainable infrastructure, which is basically what the slide here represents. And as you go from grant-based to more financially sustainable, you move up the chain of the capacity building into the investment and so forth. So it should go hand in hand, the opportunities with the reforming of water services on an institutional level as well. Finally, I think what's important is that cross-sector investments continue to grow. So having renewables combined with desalination or water pumping, for example, in remote areas, help achieve desired efficiency in the system and reduce costs. The same can be said for example, the use of sludge in the generation of the energy use in some of the wastewater treatment plants. And basically, I mean, this is the message that I wanted to give during this presentation. Challenges are growing, yet there's a lot to do. Just to highlight a couple of projects that we have actually that we're working on currently, or we worked in other places. The Kitchener Drain depollution and rehabilitation. You've heard a lot this morning about this project. We work together with EIB and the EU on this project. Similar water conveyance in Morocco, a project that basically strengthens the capacity for adaptation to climate change in certain rural areas in Morocco. And another project was a small city sanitation project, where we basically upgraded a lot of the existing wastewater infrastructure projects in Tunisia. With that, I conclude my presentation and obviously open to any questions.
For this 360 presentation, I would like to invite Mrs. Ben Maid to take the floor for her presentation.
I have a presentation. Thank you very much. What I wanted in the presentation, as we were talking about the financing for water here, is really to focus on how AFD is partnering with the governments and other actors in trying to unlock investments and necessary investments in the water sector. I will not redefine again all the water scarcity challenges that we are having in Egypt. I think we heard a lot during that week, so there is no need to go further in that regard. I'll start by saying a few words on AFD. Let's use it. So AFD, Agence Française de Développement, French Development Agency, is the arm of the French government for cooperation and development in the world. We are present in 115 countries, and we have been created in 1941. We are actually celebrating this year our 80th anniversary. So we are quite happy about that. We have a commitment of 12.1 billion euros per year in all sectors of intervention. I will present the priorities of the strategic priorities for our collaboration in water and sanitation sector. But what I want to stress before doing that is that as we are an arm for cooperation, the way we are working is really listening to the strategies of the government and to see where we can partner together, where our strategies are aligned, to move together in the real and concrete implementation. And that's really something important. And that's why we are thanking all the representatives from the Ministry of Housing and Ministry of Water and Resources and Irrigation and Engineer Mandour for showing us all their priorities. Then we have a better visibility on what our partnership can get and how our partnership can be shaped in the future. So water and sanitation is really an important sector for AFD because it's 1 billion of commitment per year. Well, it was the case last year. And if we are accumulating over the years, it's 7.1 billion of commitments throughout the world. As you can see, for AFD and for France in general, Africa is a priority continent or a priority area of intervention. That's why our activities here in Egypt are, and in North Africa in general, are really important for AFD. And we are really committed to do more and more as a part of the French policy and cooperation with the African continent. So what are our objectives? And here you will see that we are perfectly aligned with the objectives that were presented today of the objectives of the government of Egypt. And that's why I think we are having a successful partnership, being in water or other sectors. The first one is that we want to support the reduction of inequality for access to water and sanitation. You have been presented several times the IWSP projects with EU, KFW, EIB, and our friends from Swiss. So on this project, it's really aiming at improving the level of water services and wastewater services, and we are happy to be part of it. It's totally in line with the Haya Karima objectives, and that's something we want to continue and pursue. And thank you, Engineer Mabdour, because these projects are with you, and without the holding company, it would not move as it is moving at the moment. Thank you very much for that. Of course, we also want to think about long-term, mid-term. So how can we support in terms of governance? I would here use an example of Jordan, as you were previously talking about Jordan, and all the donors were talking together about like tariff reforms, but not only tariff reforms. They had an action plan on how to reduce the cost on the midterm, how to increase the revenues, how to tackle non-revenue water. It has been talked a lot about non-revenue water today. It's a main challenge, and the holding is in the forefront for that, and it's going to be the biggest challenge for us in the future, because a lot of things are already done on wastewater, and I will work on that. And of course, the resilience, because when we talk about water and sanitation, we are talking about potential to support adaptation to climate change. And quite often when we are talking about climate change, you know that all our institutions are really committed to climate change. And I have to say that AFD was really early in saying that we will be totally compliant with Paris agreements. And on top of being compliant with Paris agreement, we also have objectives of the climate co-benefits. Not only on mitigation, which is the easy thing that everyone is doing, renewable energy, but also on adaptation. That is much needed, and especially in the MENA region. So here, our objective in terms for the water and sanitation sector is to reach a target of 70% of climate co-benefits. And we already reached it in both adaptation and mitigation. The next boundary in terms of SDGs, in terms of sustainability of the sector, is biodiversity. And now AFD is committed, after having reached its commitments on climate, to support biodiversity co-benefits. And that's already one important aspect of our cooperation in Egypt, because wastewater, and I will present that right away, wastewater has a potential in both climate and biodiversity. And especially on wastewater aspects, because our cooperation in the future through the agreements we have signed this year with the government of Egypt, and we thank the government of Egypt for the insurance and the trust they have put in AFD. We have 3 big wastewater projects that are coming up. And in this project, there is always a mitigation window and an adaptation window. Mitigation, why? Every time we're trying to have biodigesters on every wastewater treatment plant. And it's not only an AFD vision for climate, it's also a government of Egypt vision, because it's important to reduce the electricity bill, which is a main driver of the cost in the sector. And I'm sure Chairman would agree with me. So that's something that we are supporting tremendously. At the moment, we are seeing like a result of 55%, for instance, of self-sufficiency in energy. But if we are taking the example of Asamra wastewater treatment plant in Jordan, they reached 80%, even more than 80% of being self-sufficient thanks to renewable energy produced on site. So not only biogas, but they also have hydropower plants, and they were thinking about photovoltaics when I was there. On adaptation also, the sanitation is the main source of adaptation. Climate change is going to reduce the water availability, is going to increase the water stress. So we need to support substitution policy. Substitution policy means what? In a country where 80% of the freshwater resources are used by agriculture, we need to work on efficiency of agriculture, but also to offer to the farmers another source of water for their irrigation. And that's where we have to ensure that the treated wastewater is at the enough quality for the farmers to use it. So if we offer there an alternative, then we are freeing more water for drinking water. And in a country like Egypt, where population is growing tremendously, that's going to be a main driver for the future development of the water sector. And biodiversity, as I said, it's the next boundary that AFD is committed to. So on biodiversity, when we are talking about wastewater treatment, we are talking about also integrating water resources management, which improves the state of the water bodies and increase the quality of the habitats for all ecosystems. And that's something that we are promoting here as in line with our partnership with government in Egypt in the coming years. And a few examples, because I'm talking a lot about Egypt, but we are also present in all these sectors in the region, and in a region like the MENA region, where scarcity is a main challenge. Everything that I described in terms of reuse of treated wastewater, biogas in order to reduce the electricity bill, but also the carbon footprint, is driving our activities in the region. Okay. Well, I talked a lot about Jordan already, but Balka wastewater treatment plant has both reuse of treated wastewater for the Jordan Valley, but also biogas production to reduce electricity, the electricity bill. And also another project that we are really proud of, which is in Gaza. You were talking about Gaza previously. Thank you. It's really one that we are proud of. So Gaza is also submitted to the risk of saline intrusion. I mean, you know better Gaza than me, but it's yeah. And so this wastewater treatment plant is not only for reuse of treated wastewater, it's another form of adaptation, because we are re-ejecting the treated wastewater inside the aquifer in order to make a barrier to the saline intrusion, which is really important for Gaza and for supply of drinking water for the people of Gaza. Now, as the main topic talked by a lot of our friends from IFIs, but also from the government, is desalination. It's a priority for the country. We have an increased increased population. There are areas that are far from the Nile, so how are they going to have drinking water? Desalination is definitely a solution. However, as you have seen through my presentation, sustainability is important in AFD's assessment of projects. And even though we share the need for desalination here, there are 3 points that we are assessing every time we are thinking about financing desalination. The energy consumption, I already talked about that. It's one of the main costs for the sector. So how are we going to optimize that cost, but also how are we ensuring that the carbon footprint of the project is adequate in comparison with all the benefits of the project? So there are opportunities to mix it with renewable energy. There is already a lot of renewable energy projects in Egypt. So that's something that Dr. Dux was presenting previously. Then there is the question on environmental impact of discharge of brines, because if it's not done properly, it can destroy ecosystems. And I would say that that point is even more important in Egypt, because Egypt has such a specific and particular and unique ecosystem in the Red Sea, and that's attracting tourism from all over the world, that protecting this biodiversity, especially on the Red Sea, is something important. And the last point, and I won't say much because I think Engineer Mamdouh already said everything about it, it's the performance of the network. If you're making a really expensive water resource, you have to be sure that the networks are performant enough to avoid any waste of money and of resources. And we know that the holding company is working on that regard, but these are the things that we are looking at every time we are looking at a desalination project. And as here we are envisaging more PPP approach, it would be more a subsidiary, Proparco, in charge of the private sector that is carefully looking at it. We already finance desalination as AFD in Capo Verde. We already finance also systems that comprise desalination, not even the desalination plant, but that means we are not against it, which was in Gaza again and Tunisia. And in Jordan with Francisco, who's going to talk after me, we were working together on the Red Sea Dead Sea project, and AFD was the lead on the studies at that time, and I was in Jordan. So we were studying all these aspects that I was describing, especially as Jordan, it was really the last recourse in terms of like water supply, drinking water supply. And now the Red Sea Dead Sea has become Aqaba Amman water conveyor system, same system, desalination in Aqaba for supplying Amman. And it's something that we are looking at the moment. And that would be all for me. I'm ready to hear your questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Benmaid. Very informative presentation. We'd like to invite Mr. Francesco Dotaro from Lux. I hope that we have a connection.
I also hope so. So please let me know if you can hear me now.
We can.
That's great. So as you can imagine, we want to test how Team Europe works, and it seems it works very well because all my colleagues help in filling this space. So there's a great cooperation between European partners, and EIB is a team player by nature because we can only finance up to 50% of project costs. So we always look for cooperation with our partners. So let me try to also upload, and if technology support me at this stage of the day, you should be able to see my screen. Otherwise, I will invite the team. So let me see if this works. And please let me know if you can actually see my screen right now. Can you see it? Hello?
No, it's not. It is not on the screen.
Okay, then I invite the team to put the presentation on. Hello?
We are here.
Yes. Can the team put the presentation on the screen?
This is what they are trying.
Yes, we'll do that shortly. Okay.
Here it is.
Okay, so Mr. Francisco, please go ahead and.
It has been on the screen, so you can go ahead.
It's shared on the screen. Hello?
Francisco? Francisco?
Hello?
Yes.
Francisco?
Sorry, I was muted, so I couldn't speak. You can hear me now. Hopefully, you can also see me.
We can hear you, and your presentation is on the screen now.
That's great. So we have discussed at length about water scarcity. So I will somehow skip. Please go to the next slide. So why are we here? So let me go back to the basic. You heard it loud and clear. Water scarcity will be the most pressing dilemma, so issue of the future generation in the region. So we are here as a team Europe, because we care about the farmers, we care about the small and medium enterprises, the industries that depends on water, and the population that sees primary sources of drinking water dramatically shrinking, including here in Egypt. The United Nations predicts that the country may reach the level of absolute water crisis by 2025. Can you please go to the next slide? So we know that there are three elements that need to be taken into consideration when we are dealing with this issue. We have an increase of water scarcity over the year, not only in Egypt, but in the region as a whole. We have an increase of the population, therefore an increase of demand. And then all this is exacerbated by climate change. So this is an impact on the GDPs of various countries. And several studies indicates that this impact is quite high, and is quite high, particularly in Egypt. So a set of countries that the partners here have mentioned have already started to address this issue. So how to solve the water security? Some of the country in particular has been mentioned in the past. The Gulf countries have heavily invested in desalination. Other countries are following this path. These are Morocco, Egypt, Jordan, and Israel. Next slide, please. So is desalination the solution, or is part of the solutions? It seems this has been discussed at length by the panels and by the previous honorable panelist. The solution seems evident that desalination is indeed one element of the equation, and this is in particular what the Egyptian government has adopted with this very ambitious plan, as one mentioned, to add 6.5 million cubic meters over the next 3 decades. But is this just the silver bullet, or we need to address it through an integrated platform, to an integrated approach? So a lot of effort, and this has been mentioned, has been made in reducing non-revenue waters, and in particularly my EBRD colleagues has mentioned, and also before KfW, the need to match investments with cost, and therefore sustainable tariff to attract private sector investors, and also to make the sector sustainable. So it is important to see this investment through an angles to multi-faced approach, where water price is one element, and sub-element of this water price are determined by the energy consumption, by the operation cost, but also on the environmental elements that the investment bring. In particular, it has been mentioned as a key element by Dr. Ibrahim at the beginning, on the environmental sustainability of the investment from a water quality perspective, and also on the greenhouse gas emissions that the investments in water may have. In addition to what we just mentioned, non-revenue waters and demand management. Please, next slide. So if this is the challenge, let me briefly present how at EIB we have addressed this challenge, which is the very reason why we are here. As EU Bank, we are here to develop water solutions and mobilize investment to address this challenge. Next slide, please. I would like first to give you an idea of what we have done it so far in the region, because EIB, and this is not very well known, but EIB is the most active development finance institution in desalination in the region. We have invested over 500 million euro in desalination plants. And this desalination plant deliver over 630 million cubic meter per year. And we have an average of 100 million cubic meter per year per plant. We have invested in the region. Some of the projects have mentioned by Attica that were in the development stage. And even at the beginning, the Gaza desalination plant has been mentioned. This is a program where we are currently managing the grant side and also the implementation of the procurement of this fully donor grant funded project. We, and also Attica has mentioned, we have been highly involved in developing two very large scale desalination project with a large water conveyor. And these are the Red Sea, Dead Sea, in the Red Sea, and the Aqaba Amman desalination and water conveyor project. As Attica has mentioned, the analysis of the environmental impact in the Red Sea is extremely complex. And we have developed a significant experience in this area, particularly for the impact on the coral larvae and due to the current in the Gulf. We have also financed 5 seawater reverse osmosis plants. 4 of these are PPP. These are very large plants, both in Israel and in Malta. And we are really keen in exploring potential investments in Egypt as the requirements, particularly from a financial side, but also from the technical side, seems to be very relevant, but also in Morocco with the new program for drinking water and supply and irrigation up to 2027. Next slide, please. The way we deal with this project is, as I mentioned at the very beginning, not on individual basis. We look at the sector as a whole, and then we can provide investments, and we have done it in the past with partner, in particular with AFD on the DC water PPP conveyors, but also with others. And these are the 2 projects that has been mentioned at the very beginning by Dr. Sayed and repeated by all the development partner. At the project level, we can bring both public sector resources at the sovereign or sub-sovereign level, but also private sector resources and mobilize in partnership with the EU grants. In addition of catalyzing other resources for the very reason that I mentioned at the beginning, that we normally finance only up to 50% of the project cost. We have significantly invested in technical and environmental studies, NTA in particular, environmental and social impact assessment, of which I'm very proud. Please, next slide. I would like to focus on 2 elements that Dr. Ibrahim has mentioned as critical. So one is the increase of demand. The other is the water quality. But I want to spend few minutes specifically on what we have achieved in the development of these desalination programs in the region. We have achieved a great economic value in terms of cost efficiency. So we have financed desalination plant with the lowest operating cost in the region. And also we have seen in our investments a downward trends in the water price. We have half the price in the last desalination finance compared to the first one that we have financed in the region. Next slide. We have not only delivered economic value, but we have also seen a lot of technology improvements. So we have seen technical breakthrough coming into the latest projects that have become then market benchmark. We have seen, for example, more efficient and durable membrane, new reverse osmosis processes. And also, and this is a key element that EIB is following, is finding and financing sustainable and cutting-edge efficient energy solutions. We have looked at there are new efficiency energy saving structures and technologies that have been brought inside the plant, how the plant works. We have seen that specific independent power producers have been linked to these plants to reduce the cost of water. And we have seen inside, as again, on the specific process and that has been adopted in the desalinations, ways to further integrate IPP within the desalination, not just outside the desalinations, through boiler in particular, that recover steam. Next slide. But the key focus, and this is what we'll highlight, as it's mentioned as an issue, but not sufficiently addressed as a solution. We have focused on improving the water quality by minimizing the salt balance of the desalinated water. So we saw that it's better to reduce the salinity in the water at the desalination stage than when the wastewater are reused for irrigation, because these appear to be more economical. So this focus on improving the water quality with high standards not only reduce the overall balance of salinity in the irrigated land and the aquifers, but also serve to improve the condition of the distribution system by reducing plumbing blockages and the needs for detergents for this system. So when we talk about sustainable solutions, we not only look at the water quality, we look also at the carbon emission, which has been touched upon. So all our projects are also Paris aligned, and we have specific requirements in terms of carbon emission and use of energy for desalination project. But we also focus on what is then discharged in the water. So indeed, carbon emission are very important, but also if we see a major scaling up of desalination in the Mediterranean in particular, we are very, very carefully following the chemicals that then are discharged and the regulations that are implemented for this chemical to be biodegradable, and also that the clear and an efficient monitoring system is put in place, in addition of advanced diffusers and tests to always assess the whole effluent toxicity. In addition, we have seen that environmental regulations that requires physical upgrading of the plants are a way to further improve their environmental sustainability. So next slide. We have touched upon, and this is the way to conclude my presentation, about renewable, and particularly colleague from the Swiss Development Agency. And we are very much focused here at the IB as the EU Climate Bank in finding a solution, next slide, that can be tailored to each individual plant. So we believe that new solutions are coming, are tested, particularly in the Gulf, that allowed for not only connections of desalination to captive photovoltaic plants, but also the specific sizing of the plants so that it can operate it during the time. So just 8 hours that is powered through renewable energy. Now there are different solutions and different way to tailor projects to the local settings, and in particular in areas like the MENA region where there is higher radiation. We see that, as I said, tests are made both in Morocco and then in the region, is also in the Mashrek, to have the highest climate adaptation impact. So not only looking at the way to reduce the tariff, which can be one way to achieve that and leave it to the private sector to find the solution, but also spend additional resources, mobilize specific grant to find slightly more expensive solution that have a larger impact in terms of adaptation in the longer term. Thank you very much, and apology again for the technical issue that we had, but it was great to listen all the other participants and see that everybody is committed to do more and together with the private sector and the authorities in the region, in particular the Egyptian authority, which we are keen to partnering with, particularly in the salinations. We can have as a team Europe, a great impact in addressing the water scarcity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francesco. Very nice presentation. Now we are going to take a break. It will be a 15 minutes break. So we're going to come back to local 1:45 local time to proceed with questions and the response from the panel. Back in 2009 to 2013, that was the MEXIP program co-financed by the EU and the EIB. And the objective of that program was to identify programs and projects in the water and waste and sanitation sector which are bankable and can be taken forward. The IWSP program and the Kafr Sheikh project, Kafr Sheikh sanitation project, which are now under implementation, are all products of this particular stage. I believe that now the Ministry of Housing and also the holding company for water and wastewater are able to carry out a program similar to this. However, I would like to have the view of the financiers, as these are the ones who will actually approve or disapprove these projects. Is this approach something that would be they would be willing to see again happening in Egypt? This question is addressed to Dr. Dukes, Francesco, AFD. So AFD would like to go ahead. We seem to have.
Hello? Oh yeah, it's working.
Yeah, we seem to have connection. We have to be disconnected with Lux.
Oh.
No, we don't.
Maybe I will start and then they will.
Okay, AFD will go ahead with a response.
Maybe just in terms of the way AFD as an IFI and a development partner sees the issue. It's like the project is implemented by national stakeholders, being holding company or couple. Now the question is the origin of funds and the original sources. So the projects, when they are priority, they are happening. It's not us approving the happening of the project or not. I mean, if you're talking, there has been a lot of projects on national budgets, which is great. And now what we are providing on top for other projects, for some projects, is concessional financing. And sometimes by providing concessional financing, we can unlock or accelerate an investment that is a priority for the government. And as you say, together as Team Europe with the European Union, but also with EIB or KfW. But if you're saying about will all these projects continue to happen in Egypt? Yes, and I think that's what the government of Egypt will say, that yes, it will happen. And as financial institutions, are we here to support the water and wastewater sector? Yes, because it has a lot of impacts and development impacts, and we are all looking for these development impacts. And as I presented, it has also a lot of climate and biodiversity impact. That's why it's particularly of interest for us.
Thank you, Ms. Bedmaid. Dr. Dukes?
Yes, thanks very much. Of course, we intend to continue and in particular in this structure and configuration of development partners, IFIs, to support the Egyptian partners in this endeavor in further developing the water sector. The first thing you have to take into account is the embedment into the sector as such. That means the role of the players in the sector reform. So where does the sector reform stand? Do we have to adjust the sector reform? And what is the way forward? So we have a regulator. Does the regulator play its role? And that leads me to the self-sustainable finance of the sector. Are the tariffs adequate, appropriate, and so on? So these are the questions we have to discuss on an overall level. The second level is how can we increase the performance of the utilities, be it the holding company, be it the affiliated companies, and so on. So therefore, also a lot of TA and a lot of support in capacity development is needed still. So we try, for example, to support the holding company and the affiliated companies in developing the capacity, the local capacity of investment planning and investment supervision, so that all the infrastructure development can be carried out on a local level, to have a better anchoring of the investments within the companies and then therefore also within the society. So that is a very, very important aspect as well. And then the other aspect then comes in line, getting back to the sector as such. So water scarcity is one aspect, and therefore we look for alternative resources, but also increasing the performance of the network, unaccounted for water, reducing water losses, water demand management, also very important. But at the same time, promote reuse of the water for agriculture. Support the nexus. So this is also a very important question, which at the next stage of after IWSP 1 and 2, we have to take into account to come to more climate resilience, to reduce the climate vulnerability of the population, of the local and of the rural population. So big cities are growing very fast and it's difficult to speed up with infrastructure development. But at the same time, we have to support the rural communities and the rural societies, also with the provision of water supply, but as well wastewater management. And we should not forget that it is a nexus and that it is integrated water resource management. So the scarce water resources we have should not be polluted, for example, by non-treated wastewater, but also by very dangerous waste, solid waste. And therefore, also within this nexus, the solid waste management is a key factor in this to protect the water resources which are scarce and which we need. So of course, taking into account these lessons learned and these some best practices from IWSP 1 and 2, we would like as KfW very much to continue with our partners and with our partners on the European side, as well as with the Egyptian partners to go on this further development of the sector. Thank you.
Francisco?
Yes, thank you very much. You
You mentioned at the beginning MESIC, the MESIC program, which was a success, co-financed by the Commission and the EIB. We are, and in particular, I am a strong believer in upstream support. Under the condition, then there is also a strong driving from the and ownership from the procuring entity or for the public promoters and the entity involved. We want to replicate this success. We are in a phase where, together with the European delegations and the European Commissions in Brussels, are identified the key strategic areas that are of importance of the EU, and together with the EU partners under this Team Europe approach, with just not a brand, but a reality, try to focus on the areas that can have the larger impact. So yes, advisory important. Yes, EIB is more involved in this new programming period. Yes, we are following the strategic priority of the EU together with our European partners to have a higher and more focused impact.
We can have one or two questions from the audience. Short, please. Please go ahead.
Thank you. This is Professor Nader Noureddin, Professor of Water Resource and Land Reclamation at Faculty of Agriculture, Cairo University. My question is for both Khalid, Atia, and Mu'tasim about the desalination technique is still so costly, and it looks like it's for a wealthy country so far, the first country in producing desalined water is Saudi Arabia by 6.5, followed by United States of America 6, and United Arab Emirates, and then Spain, Kuwait, Japan, Qatar. And as you see, this is a wealthy country or high oil production country, and no any developing country so far entered this technique. In addition, also the share of electricity in desalination is represent about 44% of the total cost, and this is needs a country can produce a high amount of electricity and inexpensive cost also. And now, how we can encourage the developing country to go through this technique, and how also we can reduce the total cost and the total share of electricity in desalination technique, in addition to also some problems in quality, because we still have a appreciable amount of iron and the manganese in producing water, makes some kidney problem for some people, and I am suffering from it when I lived in Kuwait for 3 years. And this is for both of you, how we can reduce the total cost, how we can reduce the share of electricity, how we can encourage and enhancing developing the country to get through this, because the philosophy itself of the, okay, this is the last one, the philosophy is desalinize is to survive people, not to achieve economic progress. Thank you.
Francisco, Dr. Dux, do you have any response to that? Short, please.
Yes, maybe just one aspect I would like to mention. What I said also in the presentation is we have to better connect the desalination with the energy question. So energy is the most important cost factor of desalination, and almost all countries, also like Egypt and almost all developing countries and emerging countries like Egypt, they have a renewable energy strategy. So as we experience in Tunisia, we can couple the production of desalinated water with renewable energy, but it is not a singular question. So it has to be so to say, connected to the overall national strategy of renewable energy, so that renewable energy can be produced by the utility, and that is a regulatory question, and can be put into the national grid, and then the surplus can be put into the national grid, for example, during the day or during the summer. And then afterwards, when it comes to the use of the power, then it can be taken out of the grid, so that the balance is really zero, but we have the additional effect of the reduction of the carbon emissions. So this is a win-win situation, and it costs the importance of the investment, but then afterwards operations are less costly, and of course the production of the energy as the most important cost factor is reduced. So that is one of the most important elements in the desalination, in the production of desalinated water. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Francesco, short, please.
Yes, very briefly. Indeed, the cost of desalination was very high in the past, but we've seen, as I mentioned in my presentation, and downward trends. And we see now other countries. We see Morocco, there is developing the Casablanca desalination plant, the largest in the world, 300 million cubic meters a year. We see Jordan that is moving in that direction. And then the last desalination we have financed had a lower cost than the one that was produced nationwide. So with so there is a downward trend. And naturally, this is not an easy way to reach those prices, but with a lower cost of electricity, particularly in an area with high irradiation, as it is the region, then indeed you can reduce. Then, although as Dr. Dux just said, we cannot look at desalination only individually. This needs to be put in a context of a sector where the overall sector may not be sustainable with high desalination tariff or higher desalination tariff, if then there are leakages on the pipes. And so you have higher expensive water that then is actually lost. So an overall approach is needed. And as it seems that the Egyptians are doing, for example, limiting desalination to the new city in the cost without more expensive conveyor. So this seems to be the direction. Will the cost of desalination water be reflected in reduced? Then we will see over time. But I guess if there is a very well designed program, which let's not forget, it lasts for 20-25 years. So it cannot be done in a rush. If then there are PPP, then if it's a well-structured, a good competition, a good market, and with the amounts that are circulating, Egypt will become the global market for desalination with 7 billion euro forecasted by 2050. So you have all the cars to do it right, but indeed it will require some work, and the European Development Finance Institution are here to support you in this path.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for your presence in these and previous sessions today. I will pass the floor to Mr. Abad for the next session to proceed. Thank you very much all.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you, Kostas, for arranging this panel of discussion. I think now I invite Mr. Fabio Grazzi and Ibrahim Lafia to the last segment of this seminar. We have a little bit of a time constraint, so I think we'll have to go right to the point. So I think we'll have do you want to come? Yeah. Okay. So I think on one side, I think Fabio will, on behalf of the European Union financial institutions, discuss or present what are the opportunities and challenges of what we have discussed today. And we'll give the floor to Ibrahim Lafia as well. We discussed this morning, or the ambassador presented this morning, the Team Europe initiative. I think it will be good to have this overview how the Team Europe initiative can address these opportunities and challenges. Without further delay, Fabio, please.
Well, thank you very much, Alfredo and EIB colleagues, for first of all inviting me to share with you a few thoughts on the interest and importance of addressing financial and economic perspectives within the framework of this session on sustainable finance. Beyond my personal interest in the economic subjects that are behind the appropriate management of any public sector providing public services, this is a particularly important discussion that has taken place today on water and sanitation, because also of its impact on the sustainability, and especially on the 2030 agenda on sustainable development goals. First of all, our representatives of the two ministries of water and irrigation and housing, utilities and urban communities have highlighted the importance of having a strategic vision over the next years for setting the scene for any funding and financing to be conveyed in a very efficient way. That was a very insightful presentation that we could listen to today. And then, of course, our fellows donor partners have shared their view on how we can best and more efficiently accompany these strategic visions towards sustainable investment for the future, which may also open the floor and more opportunities for private investments in the future. Many of the opportunities and challenges have been already shared with us today by the previous speakers. I won't go through them all again. They were of technical, operational, environmental, performance, human resources nature. But I would like to focus on one specific challenge that lies ahead of us in terms of ensuring sustainable management of the water and wastewater sector. And this relates to the opportunity and need for making sure that the sector really is focusing on its financial balance. And for us, focusing on financial balance means also to ensure economic efficiency of the sector, which comes down to the need for internalizing some of the major externalities that are at stake, being them of environmental or social nature. So there are two dimensions in the financial balance and in economic efficiency that I would like to focus on very briefly. On the cost side, our colleagues from EIB, from KfW, from EBRD, and of course from AFD have already pointed this out. On the cost dimension, when it comes to intervening in the water sector, there is two major sources of cost: the labor cost and the energy consumption. All IFIs, and in particular the European financial institutions, including AFD, attach a great importance to the reducing the cost of the energy consumption. There is a direct impact in reducing the OPEX cost, of course, of the operation and maintenance in the water and sanitation sector. But moreover, this allows us to bring forward the climate discourse, because you reduce the carbon footprint alongside while promoting renewable energy generation for consumption, on-site consumption in the water and sanitation sector. And then, of course, there is the revenue side of the economic efficiency and financial balance of the sector. And the revenue side has also been put forward by the representatives of the ministry and of the holding company. It's an issue that is being carefully looked at by the government with the help and support of the IFIs and the World Bank specifically. And this is also a delicate subject, because when it comes to having a roadmap for water tariff, which is of crucial importance to internalizing the costs, both economic and financial costs of running business in the water and sanitation sector. Then it has also social impacts because of the bill that is being paid by the household. So there's also social and financial sustainability to find an equilibrium on in the revenue side. So all in all, and I conclude here because the time is really running by. I'd like to commend the effort of the government of Egypt in making sure that the water and sanitation sector is really looking ahead on a very solid basis, and reassure the government of Egypt that the European financial institutions, and we are here all together today, thanks to the EIB colleagues that organized this session, are really supporting the government in the next steps ahead, and we look forward to a very successful collaboration in the water and sanitation sector. Thank you very much.
Ibrahim, forgot to make the introductions, but Fabio Grazzi is the director of the Alliance Française de Développement in Cairo, and Ibrahim Lafia is the head of the cooperation of the European Union delegation in Cairo.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alfredo, and thank you very much for having organized this session and this very interesting workshop. Water sector is definitely a key sector not only in Egypt, but everywhere, but especially here in Egypt. And we see all the challenges that the sector is facing these days and will be facing in the future with the demographic growth that the country sees. But beyond that, how we as Europeans address the challenges, and how we can, of course, be of an added value in the future. Fabio has just mentioned the technicalities of the sector when it comes to its economic efficiency, when it comes to financing balance, but also when it comes to sustainable management, which are absolutely key. We as the European Union, we have been and we will be certainly one of key supporters and funders and promoters of solutions, initiatives in order to keep up with the sustainability and management of the sector. The European Union is currently discussing actually the next programming cycle of the European Union over the period 21-27. And in all our discussions that we have had with the government, with the ministries, be it Ministry of Water and Irrigation, but also Ministry of Housing and other entities, the water sector has been flagged as one of the major sector to support in the future. And for that, we are currently, of course, discussing a new paper for our EU-Egypt partnership priorities. And in this discussion, of course, which is led by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we have seen that this is something also that is emerging, and this is key in our partnership as Europeans. So how we are going to do it, and how we are going to support our Egyptian friends in doing it. First of all, we do, and I think certainly in the discussion of today, we do align to the strategies and the plans. And of course, the major plan that we need to align to is the National Water Resource Plan, with the vision of that was established in 2017. So what that plan will tell us, and which are the sectors that for us we would like to align to. First of all, we would like to support in the fresh water availability, and this is including project in the desalination. I understand the questions from the colleague here on the question that can be asked about desalination, but I think here there is certainly a way to learn also from region experiences, but also to make sure that it is accompanied with also measures and policies that would reduce non-water or non-revenue water, but also how to take advantage of the renewable energy sources of Egypt in order to be able to develop such plan. But we would like to support you into that. Of course, rainwater harvesting, flood management, water quality is certainly something that it's very important for the European Union. And this is, of course, is the quality of the potable water, but also take into consideration the drain rehabilitation, the enhanced waste collection, and improve the sludge management. All this would certainly contribute, while enhancing management of water use is also a key aspect, as well as enabling environmental capacity building and modernization of the water management framework. Next period, as I said, 21-27, we are having a new financial instrument that is called the Neighborhood Development International Cooperation Instrument. This instrument is supposed to, in the region, to mobilize 7 billion euros of blending, but also guarantees that will be extended for not the water sector, but all infrastructure sectors. That should mobilize 30 billion euros of financing from our European financial institutions. What concretely that means for Egypt, as was mentioned during the visit of our Commissioner for the Neighborhood and Enlargement in the past 2 days, he promised and committed himself to deliver on Egypt for a period of 21-27 of an amount of 1 billion euro. That billion euro will be in the form of grants, but also guarantees. So what we mean by guarantees, the guarantees that will be extended to our sister bank or European Union Bank, the EIB, but also our European financial institutions when trying to also crowd in the private sector, because that's one of the main challenge actually also in the water sector, how we can also open up to the private sector to deliver on the plans that I have mentioned. And we saw the other day, His Excellency the President mentioned that a need for $50 billion over the coming years. So from the European Union, we aim to mobilize 1 billion euros. That should lead to a 9 billion euros of investment. 9 billion euros of investment from our financial institutions, EIB, EBRD, AFD, and KfW. And this will be done through a new concept that we are introducing, which is Team Europe Initiative. Team Europe Initiative is bringing the EU plus the European financial institutions together in order to support in one direction, in order to align to priorities of the government, but also to deliver on the objectives and expected results. And these Team Europe initiatives, we are gonna to establish one in the water sector that is a nexus between water sector, food security. That will, of course, entail also interventions in the agriculture sector, but also into supporting the livelihood of rural communities and rural areas. So we are glad to work with EIB and EBRD, AFD, and KfW and others, because there are also other European financial institutions that have not a country office here, but are ready to engage with us and to commit themselves. Of course, this will be done in close coordination and partnership with the ministries, with the CAPO, and with the holding company in order to take advantage of this momentum. So this is what I can say, Alfredo, at this stage, and we are certainly going to work more and more in the future in order to deliver on these commitments made by the EU Commissioner. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think we have had a very intense and interesting morning of discussions of different aspects of the water sector in Egypt. I think there is a lot of work ahead of us as well. I think now when the new programming will be in place, I think this is something that is going to give us a lot of reasons to continue working in the sector. And in the partnership, and in partnership for us is a very broad concept. It's not only partnerships about, obviously, first of all, with our partners of the European Union financial institutions, but think more importantly with our partners in Egypt, with includes all the stakeholders that work at the government level, private sector, and so on. And without further delay, because I think we are a bit running out of time, I think we can go to the concluding remarks of the Dr. Rania Al-Mashad, Minister of International Cooperation. If the IT allows me 30 seconds, I would like, first of all, also to thank everybody, the organizers, first of all, you, the audience that has been joining us today here in presence, but also online. I would like to thank the speakers. They have been part of the panels, and also the Ibrahim and Fabio that have made these final remarks. I would like also to thank the organizers, including our IT colleagues. It has been always a challenge to organize this hybrid. After 20 months of working on hybrid, I think we're still learning how to master hybrid, but I think it went very well. It went very well. Thank you very much. And well, thanks to everybody and the European Union as well, because it has helped us a lot in the organization of this on this seminar, and obviously our partners in Egypt. So I would like just to, maybe we can conclude with the recorded message from Rania Al-Mashad to close this seminar. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to deliver today the closing remarks of the Financing Water Projects, Opportunities and Challenges seminar organized by the European Investment Bank, the EU delegation in Cairo, the KfW and AFD, with the participation of the Ministry of Water and Irrigation and the Ministry of Housing, Utilities and Urban Communities, as well as the 4th Cairo Water Week. Water is the source of life. However, it is most affected source by climate change. An increased frequency of extreme weather severely affects the availability and quality of freshwater resources, causing water-related natural disasters. Financing water and water-related projects is a challenge that faces developed and developing countries. Investments in water sector seeks to address important issues such as shortages, quality of water, and water systems. These issues are vital for the well-being of people and the economy overall. There is a need for substantial investments to build quality infrastructure, deployment of high technology and best practices. I'm sure that the seminar was a good opportunity to discuss the planned projects in the water sanitation and desalination subsectors in the framework of the Egyptian National Water Resource Plan 2017-2037, through development financing, public-private partnerships, and other innovative financing tools to pool more financing to the sector. During the 4th edition of the Cairo Water Week, which will end on the 28th of October 2021, discussions about population issues and the impact of overpopulation on common management of trans-boundary rivers and climate change were made this year for the first time. Egypt has a significant relationship with our European partners, as they are considered strategic development financial partners for Egypt, contributing to the implementation of priority projects in a wide range of areas, including in the water and wastewater of both public and private sectors. The EIB, for example, is currently financing water and wastewater projects amounting to close to 594 million euros, as well as other development partners. Despite the COVID-19 challenges, the year of 2021, still present, was significant in the relationship between the European partners and Egypt, as we succeeded in providing financing from our European partners in many sectors, including water and wastewater sectors. We also succeeded with the coordination between the Ministry of International Cooperation and European partners to disperse some tranches from different ongoing projects implemented in these sectors, taking into consideration the importance to fund liquidity for sectors highly affected by the pandemic in 2020. The government of Egypt is adopting a series of measures which reflect interest given to the improvement of water and wastewater sectors in the framework of some presidential initiatives such as Haya Karima, Decent Life, and by preparing and implementing bold strategic plans to mitigate climate changes and face the water scarcity, such as desalination plan till 2050. On that front, the Ministry of International Cooperation seeks to develop and strengthen relations with multilateral and bilateral development partners through multi-stakeholder platforms that will organize at the ministry with line ministries in the presence of development partners, which constitutes an opportunity for discussing the priorities for cooperation and financing, as well as applying consistent global partnerships narrative, concentrating on the different needs and priorities. In the end, I'm confident with the continuous cooperation between the Egyptian stakeholders and the development partners on all levels, we can achieve our common goals towards realizing sustainable development and inclusive economic growth by improving access to clean drinking water, safe sanitation services, reducing water resources pollution, and achieving water and sanitation targets in the framework of the United Nations Development Goals. Thank you, EIB and EU, for inviting me today to deliver the closing remarks. I wish if I was able to participate in person, and until we meet very soon, good luck in all these endeavors.
The seminar is closed now. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.